Holy crap on a cracker.
That was a good one, man.
Did you see me spray all across the room over here?
No, I'm not going to lie. I was focusing on mine to make sure it did not explode like they tend to for me.
Mine was like projectile targeted that way. It just went whoosh.
Well, sounds like we need a slow motion playback.
Oh, maybe.
But like
I could arrange for that.
Maybe.
All right. So before you're wondering what kind of podcast you join where I talk about spraying stuff, welcome to Movie Boners. Which is worse, actually. I just realized. I just made the connection in my head.
That might be my favorite intro we've ever done. Cheers,
let's
Jake.
move on.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. What beer are you drinking for today's episode?
Oh, it did spray a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, it happens. Let me tell you.
You don't got to tell us, Jake. You don't got to tell us.
You can just assume.
All right. So I go to the liquor store with I have a clear idea of whether it's the image on the can or some kind of silly name to go along with tonight with the episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't find shit of anything in mind that I had, and I was like, but it'd be so good, but there's nothing. And then it's the saddest connection I think I've ever made.
That's saying something because you've had some terrible.
I've had some terrible ones. So maybe I should. I'll take a step back from that one. It's not the saddest, but it's sad. Instead of Blade Runner, which sounds so cool, I found a beer called Trail Runner.
It's actually shockingly closer than I thought it would be.
And I was like, I guess that's the one.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely good. I don't fault you for that.
All right. I appreciate that.
What is it? How is it? What's going on? Give me the whole scoop. Hold on. He's tasting it, swishing it around his mouth.
Oh, you don't swish
like a
beer
sommelier.
Oh.
Well,
it's okay.
Getting all the bubbles. It's okay.
It's a golden ale. Made right here in the place that I live.
Being cagey about it all of a sudden.
It's made here in Cedar Park. It's not bad. It's a golden ale, so it's already kind of like I knew what I was getting. They're not my favorite kind of beers, but
yeah, it's hard to make them really stand out.
We'll yeah.
Soldier on. Okay. Well, mine, I also, like you, planned on the very specific aesthetic that Blade Runner has, and I didn't find anything like that. I was kind of shocked. I feel like everybody should knock that off or whatever. But because it is heralded as one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, I went with this one called Space Goat, as in greatest of all time. It also reminds me of Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, which was an Adult Swim show that was hilarious.
Dude, Space Ghost was great.
Yeah. It's from the Big Sky Brewing Company in Montana, USA. And it's a pale ale, just a normal old pale ale. And it's pretty good.
All right.
I will give them that. Yeah.
I know I'm the last person to probably point this out, considering some of the past beers I've had that have nothing to do with the episodes. But
they're not in space.
But they're not in space.
Shut the fuck up. Those replicants are in space. They come from Mars. It's about colonization of other planets.
They are sent to help colonize other planets, but then we've got this group, the Nexus 6, that come back.
But they came from space. They went to space. They came back from space. We're trying to leave Earth to go to space. It's a whole thing. It fits.
It is. I'm not judging. I just felt like
You're judging.
I'm really not. Mine is called Trail Runner.
Like you have 50% of the movie name in your matches completely. 50% matches 100%. So I think you're all right.
All right. I've had some doozies though, so I can't judge.
Yes, that's true.
All right.
Okay, so let's, before we get too far away from it, check in on the old movie draft.
God.
Let me share my dang screen over here. And I will say, you are just making me feel the heat a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and be a little honest. Drop the whole heel shtick I've been doing, and the margin between us and the IMDb rating
How are
is
your
razor thin at
ratings
this
still
point.
so high? I've got like some of the highest rated movies of the year.
Yes, you have the two highest rated movies of the year between Oppenheimer and Spider-Man, which coincidentally are like the 15th and 22nd highest rated movies of all time on IMDb right now,
Right.
which is a big deal. The interesting thing, you've definitely been catching up. You had a dip here, and then that's when Spider-Man came out, and everything's been rising since. Of the last like 7 movies over the last 2 months, not counting Insidious, they've all been raising your average.
Yeah.
So that has certainly helped. Although Haunted Mansion came out today, or when we're recording this, and that's going to knock your average down a little bit.
Right.
I've been, hanging on more or less. I didn't have a lot come out in July. You definitely owned July. I had just Barbie. But I have a lot.
But Barbie
in
helped
August,
you a
so.
lot. Barbie is killing it right now.
Yeah, especially on the box office side, it's doing very well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say rating wise, better than I expected. I expected maybe a 7, 6.7, somewhere in that range. It's definitely very good, seems like. So I am not complaining. So
I
yeah,
know you're not.
rating we're extremely close. Box office we're closer than we've been in a long time. I definitely think this year overall the box office will be higher than last year, since we kind of leveled out third quarter of last year.
Right about here, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to keep going up with what we've got going on in August.
All right.
So yeah, that's the draft. You're definitely doing very well. Your number one pick overall, Mission Impossible, is doing very well. Although box office wise, it's like half of what Fallout did, which is surprising, I would say.
I think I have a theory on that.
Yeah.
I think it really is the timing of the release. I think it got completely lost in the shuffle of the whole Barbieheimer thing.
Yeah, it was really big.
Going around. Everyone was really only anticipating Barbie and Oppenheimer. And I really do think it just got lost in the shuffle of the trendiness.
Which sucks. It's a movie that was announced like 4 years ago that we've been waiting for forever, and for it to come out and kind of get missed is that's unfortunate for sure.
It is.
Yeah. So and Oppenheimer is fantastic, apparently. I know you have seen it, so we'll hear about that in a second. I see it tomorrow, the day after we're recording this, so I don't have an update yet, but next time I definitely will.
All right.
And another slight draft update. Dates have been moving.
You are you clenching? Because you've got a couple that they've been like, we might not release these at all this year.
Yeah, the very first one I saw was the worst possible one, which was Warner Brothers said, or I think it was Vanity Fair or somebody had an article that said Warner Brothers is considering moving out Dune Part 2 and Aquaman and something else, Color Purple maybe.
Yeah, it was Color Purple.
And so that made me very sad to hear. Although I read just today from the CEO of IMAX, they had an earnings call and they said, I'm pretty confident Dune will come out this year. I think that Vanity Fair article was bogus.
Okay.
And James Wan, did you see what James Wan said about Aquaman?
No.
He's like, if Warner Brothers moves Aquaman out again, I will sue them. So I think those are safe. But The Color Purple. Oh, no, not The Color Purple. Harold and the Purple Crayon, the other purple movie this year.
Mhm.
Harold and the Purple Crayon moved to next year, which was one of mine. They Listen, which I don't think either of us remember what that even is.
Nope.
That moved out to next
Not
year.
even a little bit. Completely forgot about it.
Ghostbusters Afterlife moved to next year.
Shit.
And True Love, which I also don't remember what that is, moved to next year.
What the fuck?
So yeah, dropped a handful there.
All right.
And the Saw X moved up.
Moved up. Yeah, it's in September now.
Which I don't know if that means they're extremely confident they don't need Halloween in order to sell tickets, or if they're extremely worried that The Exorcist came out like 2 weeks before them or whatever, a week before them.
I think it's getting moved so that Exorcist can have its moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I was chatting with somebody on Instagram and I was like, I don't think I even remember Saw 6, 7, or 8. And so I should rewatch the whole series. I don't want to admit it, but I'm a little excited for Saw X, actually.
I know you are. You love the Saw franchise.
I do. I was very disappointed by Spiral, and I really hope it gets back to the Jigsaw.
Yeah, Spiral
bringing it back.
Spiral had a lot of good potential, and it just didn't do anything with it. It was really disappointing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, what new movies have you watched, Jake?
I've watched a handful of things.
Okay.
I watched a documentary. This is going to be... probably nobody in the world cares about this, but there's a documentary that came out called Attack of the Doc. And if you were like me and you watched Tech TV as a kid, and then remember when Tech TV got bought by G4, and it was the first TV network that had video games and internet videos and all that stuff.
What show or channel? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, their headline show was Attack of the Show, and Olivia Munn was a host on it when she was a nobody, and it was really, really good. Anyway, Chris Gore, one of the guys that used to be on that show sometimes, and he made a documentary about how its rise and fall of that show and the whole network, basically, and kind of how they were able to get away with all these different things before the internet age and leading into the internet age and all this stuff. It was really good. It was kind of a nostalgia thing.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if it would appeal to general audiences, but I really liked it. Speaking of nostalgia things, though, I watched another it's not really a documentary. I guess it kind of is. It's a series on Netflix called Muscles and Mayhem.
Okay.
The unauthorized story of American gladiators. It was awesome. If you watched American Gladiators in the 90s and dug it like I did, it was really cool to see all of the gladiators talk about what it was like and getting that show off the ground. And it reminded me a lot of, especially in the beginning, it reminded me a lot of Glow, that wrestling show with Allison Brie, where they're just trying to find a network, trying to find someone to pick them up, kind of doing these events in the shittiest possible circumstances and very dangerous and all this stuff, and then going to become celebrities and all this interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why it's an unauthorized story, because pretty much everybody involved in making it, all of the main gladiators, producers, directors, everybody, stunt coordinators, they were all giving interviews and stuff. So it seems pretty in-depth. I really thought it was interesting.
All right.
I'm close to finishing season 4 of Succession. I have a couple episodes left, so I will not give you an update until I finish that. I did watch, as far as movies, my only good movie that wasn't the movie that we're talking about today is I watched Nope, finally.
You hadn't seen that?
I never got around to seeing Nope. I have a backlog of movies from 2021, 2022. And what year are we in? 2023? Yeah, okay.
23.
I had a panic attack where I was like, are we in 2024? Am I not that far behind? No. So, yeah, Nope was good. I definitely thought it was pretty cool. I think I liked it quite a bit. It was different and interesting, for sure. Yeah,
I really thought it was a nice fresh take on aliens. It was a nice, it's unique. The design of the alien I thought was really cool. The idea of the alien was really cool. I
Yeah.
meet more people that thought it sucked than I meet people that enjoyed it.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I thought it was actually pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Hmm.
I like the alien in it.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I think that, yeah, and I liked the overall, I guess, just story and
Yeah,
the characters, and I liked the whole thing. It was good,
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
for sure. That's all for me.
Oh, okay.
What about you?
I really only watched 3 new movies. One, I don't think anyone has even heard of, and then 2, everyone has heard of. So I watched this weird movie on Netflix called The Strays. This was one of those
Okay.
where I had come across an article that popped up on like one of my, I think it was Facebook,
Mhm.
and it was like, this movie is making audiences so queasy and uneasy to watch this. It's making people so nervous.
It's like a horror movie type
Yeah,
thing?
like a thriller. And so me being me was like, all right.
Yeah, bet.
Yeah, it sucked. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's got a good premise and it's just so dumb.
Not executed well.
No. And there's so many. It's one of those movies. It was really frustrating because it's like every 15, 20 minutes of this 2-hour movie, you're like, shit, you could throw. This is one of those, like, you could have like 6 twists and it would just
Yeah.
make it so incredible. And every time you're like, here, this is a good spot for one. There's got to be a jaw dropping moment. You're like, no.
What's the premise?
This woman, she's the superintendent of the school. Her 2 kids go to the school with her, and she's like kind of rich. She's high lifestyle, like hoity-toity kind of shit. And these 2 strangers kind of quietly and subtly start like showing up all the time around her. They show up in the school and they're like freaking her out. She kind of starts like having these weird mental breakdowns. So there was so much to it that could be really cool and really fun for a thriller movie, especially. And by the time the end credits rolled, the final scene of the movie, I was like, this might be the dumbest goddamn movie I've ever, like, it made me mad how it ended, because it was just like, I would have given you grace if you just like, I guess we just shit the bed on this one. But the ending of that movie was like, you deliberately were just like, you know what? We didn't make this movie shitty enough.
Mm-hmm.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, I hate that when the audience does a better job of writing the movie than the actual movie makers did. Yeah. That's even a movie that seems pretty good. If I go home and someone's like, they should have just done this, that will ruin it for me. Because I'm like, yeah, that would have been way better. I can't believe they didn't do that. That's stupid.
You're just like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, it really is.
And then I saw Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. I am very sad that it's gotten lost in the hype over Barbie and Oppenheimer, and nothing against either one of those movies, but I am sad. I kind of feel like Tom Cruise was right on trying to change release dates, because even he's been like, it had nothing to do with, I just don't want those movies to come out. Like, in a malicious way, he was literally like, we've been working on this movie for the audience. It has Hollywood's like most dangerous, incredible stunt ever put on camera.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally trying to just be like, we just want the world to watch our movie. Like,
right. Just put it out there.
And it really is incredible. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It does a few new things for the Mission Impossible franchise.
Okay.
But the new things didn't bother me. It's definitely the most, there's scenes in it that feel the most James Bondsy, and I had to chuckle to myself while watching it, because you and I had just talked about that the Mission Impossible franchise like has a James Bond feel, but it's a little skewed. This one has,
they're spies with gadgets.
Yeah, this one definitely has a few moments where you're like, this is total James Bond. but not in a
Yeah.
bad way. I didn't take it as a bad way, but the humor's
Good.
great in it. The action is incredible in it. The stunts are amazing. Yeah, that bike jump is just, when you watch that on the big screen, it's just unreal. It's incredible. And then I saw Oppenheimer, and I went during the Barbie Oppenheimer craze weekend. This was incredible, Jake, dude. So my daughter got picked up, and I went to the movie after she got picked up by her mom, because she was like, I don't know that I want to see Oppenheimer, Dad. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go watch it. But she did tell me, she was like, please, though, tell me how it is. And I think my daughter wants to watch it now. But so I go to the theater. Dude, the place was fucking packed. The parking lot was full. The lobby was loud with everyone walking around talking, excited. It literally.
You see it in IMAX?
I did not go to the IMAX, no.
Yeah.
I kind of wish
What's shocking to me is how few real IMAX theaters there are.
There's very few.
I learned that recently.
Very few.
I don't think we even have one around here that's like true IMAX.
But it reminded me, dude, it was like a time capsule of stepping into those days before you pre-saved your tickets, before everyone had any kind of screening. It was like walking into.
There's like a line and everything.
Oh God, it was madness. I walked up, I was getting my popcorn and my water, and the people at the theater kind of recognize me sometimes because I'm there.
You're kind of a big deal.
I'm kind of there every weekend, so I'm a regular.
Yeah.
I'm not a big deal. I'm just the guy that walks in early morning every other Saturday or every other Sunday late afternoon, early evening. I'm one of those guys. And I walked down and I made my comment because as someone who grew up in that, I miss those days.
Yeah, me too.
They irritated me back then, but God damn, I miss that shit.
Yeah.
And there was so much pink everywhere. I don't think I've ever seen that much pink in my life. And I made a comment of just like, it's a madhouse. Like, this is crazy, but cool. And the people behind the counter, they did tell me like, oh, it's been all weekend starting on like Thursday pre-screenings. People are double featuring Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is nuts. That's like 6 hours sitting straight because Oppenheimer is 3. And I think Barbie is 2, maybe just under.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And then you've got previews and then the in-between time. Like, that is a lot.
Right. Yeah, probably an hour of previews between the two.
Yeah. And so I was excited. I go in the theater that I'm in, the screen that I'm in. Packed house. I mean, sold out show. I was so happy, so excited.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, like families are showing up with like kids younger than my daughter, kids my daughter's age, older, like, and I kind of respected the parents for that because I was like, you clearly know this is like historically significant. This guy is kind of a big deal, and most generations have no idea who the hell he was.
Right.
And so I respected that. There's like all these women dressed in bright neon pink, either being ironic or they had just come from Barbie or they were going to go to Barbie afterwards. I digress.
They didn't have 2 outfits planned.
No. To that movie. You're seeing it tomorrow, the day after we record. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow around noonish.
You will probably, when it ended, this was, I mean, it's not like exciting. It is, but it's not. It is dialogue driven. It is a historical film. And it is so much to unpack that when it, I mean, the score, Jake, the music is going to floor you. People have,
I'm excited for that.
Yes. People have talked about like the movie isn't sad per se. It's not like overwhelmingly sad, or there's not parts that are like really made to make you like cry or whatever. But the music and just the knowledge of where everything led to.
Yeah.
Dude, you get chills. There were people crying in the theater with me. My daughter asked me, like, did you cry? I was like, no. But there's a couple scenes where you definitely feel just this overwhelming feeling of emotion. And
moved.
It's intense. It's hard to describe. That movie is a true experience, and it's a masterpiece. I don't say that just as a Nolan fan. It is. Take note, filmmakers. Like, when you're allowed to make movies again, take note. It is so amazing.
Where would you put it in his? Maybe it's too early to say.
Man, it's hard for me to say that. I've seen a lot of people doing like, we're ranking the Nolan films. And I don't know if it's just a gut reaction or maybe I'm just a obnoxious Nolan fan. I don't know. I don't know that I can rank his movies. Like, legit.
That's how I feel about it.
I've thought about it, and I'm like, dude, every one of his movies has like hit me so deep and just blown me away in different and unique ways. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could rank his films.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. As if I think about one, then I'm like, yeah, that's the best one. And then I'll be like, oh, but Inception is really good, and Interstellar is really good.
Right.
Memento is really good. Like, I can't choose.
I can't choose them. Oppenheimer was incredible. It was a real experience. Going to the theater that weekend was an actual experience, and I'm so glad that I got to be there. I did not do the double feature, although my daughter did go and see Barbie with her mom, and apparently it made them both cry, and they're both like, we love this movie. It's amazing. It's like, all right, it's good to know.
Yeah, Christy just came back from seeing Barbie as well, and she really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. It made her cry as well. She connected with it for sure.
So I thought, like, hey, that's cool. I was glad that my daughter and her mom went and saw it together. She thought about having me take her, and I would have, but I'm more happy that she saw it with her mom. I feel like that was probably a more important thing. But that weekend was incredible to watch this movie, and 2 parts made me laugh.
Okay.
Neither of which were supposed to be funny.
Okay.
So the movie ends, and it was like, theater is silent. No one's really smiling. No one's talking. It's just...
They're all unpacking.
You're processing so much, and we're all piling out of the theater. Everyone's somber. Everyone's just like, whew, 3 hours of just like, there's a lot to process and unpack and just understand and kind of challenge yourself with a lot of stuff. Nolan challenges you, and when I say you, like, I mean all of us, he challenges the audiences, modern day audiences, with the most basic science question, or not even science question. It's just, there's a lot of ethical questions brought up, and it's not in a preachy, pick a side kind of way. It's very personal to you. That's how I took it.
Consider this.
And, but we're all leaving, everyone's somber, and we're walking down the hallway towards the lobby, the exit doors. And coming the other way are all the showtimes getting out from like other films like Mission Impossible, Barbie,
where everybody's so excited.
And you could see it. Everyone's smiling and laughing and talking, and you could see the exact moment that they would make eye contact with us coming out of Oppenheimer, because their smiles would go away. They would look down, and you're just like, yeah.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. I loved it. And then the other funny part was they played like 3 trailers before Oppenheimer at the showing I went to.
Yeah.
Which I was a little bummed about. I'm not going to lie. I was like, because I had heard there were no trailers. Yeah. And I was hoping for that.
I think it's only on 70 millimeter IMAX because the reel is so gigantic. So they don't have space. Yeah.
But they only played like 3 trailers, maybe 4. And I had told myself, if they don't play it, amazing. If they do play trailers, this will be weird. This is like the first movie that we won't have Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer, and Barbie trailer before it. So...
Yeah. I asked Christy, I was like, what trailers did they play? And I'm like trying to think of what's coming out the rest of the year, and I can't even think of it.
I was just, this is going to be crazy. And they played like the Killers of the Flower Moon or whatever it's called, which I'm still on the fence about. I don't even remember the other trailer they played. And then this weird trailer kicked in from Blumhouse, and it's like these two girls are going to school, to Catholic school, the dad's saying bye, and all of a sudden the two girls start acting weird, and they're like crazy and possessed. The doctors are like, we don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, Ellen Burstyn shows up, and she's the mom from the original Exorcist. And they're like,
Okay.
have you ever dealt with this before? And she's like, I have. And I think it was that time that you started realizing how many people in the theater were realizing what trailer we were seeing for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That audience, I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah.
But the audience I was with, myself included, were laughing out loud during the whole Exorcist Believer trailer.
That's not good.
I
Not
loved
good at
it.
all.
I was like, fuck you, David Gordon Green. This is what you've done. No one's like, you ruined one franchise. You're apparently going to attempt to ruin another one with a requel, which we don't need. And it looks worse. It looks so bad. Jake, you have to watch
this. You can't go around requeling all the classic horror movies.
Oh, God. It looks so bad. It like, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a little biased. It genuinely, I have this whole audience sold out show to back me up on this one. It looks terrible. Like, oh my God, this should go down in just a blazing fire of like, they tried, but really, really shit the bed. Yeah. But I was happy to see this audience not react as the trailer is apparently trying to force you to react. It looks so bad, Jake.
I didn't even know it came out. I'm going to watch the trailer right after this.
Oh my God, it looks so stupid. And it did make me think of something, and I think we talked about this back when Scream came out. And I think I actually mentioned it during that quick little thing. I'll try to wrap it up because we got a lot to say.
Yes, sure.
I'm over this requel craze.
Yeah.
It's done. Like, move on. I'm done with it. Come up with your own fucking franchise. Come up with your own ideas. Stop trying to piggyback and ruin existing franchises. It's
more ballless than a full reboot. Like some reboots, most reboots suck, but at least they were bold enough to actually try
and do their own thing.
Piggyback.
I think the only franchise that can really pull it off is Scream, and that's simply only because it was made as like a meta joke on
because everybody else had already done it.
But even that, I know I said this when the last Scream came out of just like, I think it's time to conclude it. Like, I think it's okay to leave it be now. Obviously, that's not going to happen. I think we do have another one coming out like next year. Didn't they announce one when the Scream 6 came out?
There's another Scream movie.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about another requel.
Oh, no. I meant Scream. Scream. Sorry.
Yeah. There is another Scream for sure.
But yeah, I'm kind of like, I think I'm done with the requel stuff. And I think David Gordon Green is like the big proprietor of that, of just absolutely raping it and destroying it to me. So, God, I hope The Exorcist fails so hard. Oh, I hope it fails so hard.
Yeah, I agree completely. It'd be great if Saw X was incredible and like a true sequel.
I would be down for that. If Saw X ends up just being this amazing true conclusion to this franchise or whatever, because they're not even saying like it's completely under wraps. If that ends up being amazing and better than like Spiral or Saw 9,
Jigsaw, I think.
Jigsaw,
I think it was called Jigsaw.
Okay, then cool. And if Exorcist fails, I will rejoice. I will be so happy. God. Fucking
Yep. Okay. Well, that is a good place to move on because, like you said, we have a lot to talk about in this episode. Like we mentioned last time, this episode is completely spoiling the original Blade Runner.
I like that you say the original. There's no remake.
It's not a remake, but I do think if you talk about Blade Runner now, 2049 was kind of became a new cult hit, and that's the one that people think of more when you talk about Blade Runner.
Okay, I
For a lot of people,
I could see that.
maybe not us that like is like old movie dorks, but at least my wife, when I'm like, hey, I have to watch Blade Runner, she's like, okay, sounds good, put it on. And I put it on. She's like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, it's Blade Runner. We're watching Blade Runner. She's like, no, 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 no. I thought we were watching 2049. I was like, no, we're watching a Blade Runner.
So I get what you're saying. I'm gonna come out with a hot take.
Okay.
I kind of
Out the gate.
I kind of agree with them. I think 2049 is actually a better film. I think it's a better story, and I think it's a better film.
I think it's one of the rare occasions where the sequel is better than the original.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So
but I think that
I get the reason.
We'll get into it. But I think that the original sets up a lot of interesting things that the sequel expands on.
Yeah, it does a very good job.
Necessary.
Yeah, and I say that as a fan of Blade Runner, from the 80s. But yeah, I think 2049 I think it's just a better written story.
Yeah, it's incredible. And we'll talk about it next time. But I agree, and I think primarily because I wasn't originally a big fan of the first Blade Runner. When I saw it, I was like, it's whatever. Partly because it's not a like sci-fi adventure movie like Star Wars. It's very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very moody and aesthetic-y and all of this other stuff. And it took me a little while to warm up to it and actually start to love it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm in the same boat. When I first saw it, I was pretty young. I didn't care for it. I thought it kind of sucked. And my dad also kind of thought it sucked. Like when I watched it, he kind of like made the comment like, probably not one of Harrison Ford's best. And I was like, what? It's Harrison Ford. You hear about this movie all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of agreed with him. I was like, man, this movie the pacing was weird. The voiceover is so dumb and it sounds bad. It's like, I don't like this movie. And then in high school, when I worked at that video store, that was like after the director's cut had been released. And I never even bothered with the director's cut because I was like, why would I watch a extended version of a movie I don't like?
Right.
And then the final cut was released in like, 2007? So a few years later.
Yeah.
And I rewatched it after the final cut came out, and I ended up watching the final cut.
Okay.
And the voiceover was gone. You had the unicorn was in it, and the pacing seemed better. Everything just seemed better with it. It made more sense, which is ironic because the voiceover was put in the theatrical cut to just blatantly tell you everything going on screen, but it made the movie not work.
Right. It is way, way worse.
And the movie makes more sense without the voiceover explaining everything to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. So I didn't watch the theatrical cut until I had already been a fan of the movie.
Oh, okay.
I saw the final cut first because I saw it pretty late. And I was like, well, I'll just start with the final cut because I knew Ridley Scott like approved it. It's the only version that he had like full creative control on. And so I was like, well, that's the one. That's the approved artist vision. So I'll just start with that. And even then, it still kind of like took me a while to warm up to it. But then I became a fan and I was like, okay, let's check out the other ones just to see. And I have heard other people say, I love the theatrical cut still.
Yeah.
Even Christopher Nolan and Guillermo del Toro, they're like, I prefer the theatrical cut, which is kind of interesting. But I think, especially if you started with that version and it moved you or you connected with it in some way, you'll always probably prefer that version.
Yeah, I totally like to each their own. I couldn't get into that theatrical cut. Couldn't do it.
Yeah. So we're certainly going to get into spoilers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But before we do that, we'll talk about the movie in general without spoilers. And I think if you have never seen Blade Runner, you should see it. I think it's definitely a great movie worth seeing. And I think it can be confusing because there are so many cuts out there. So we can run them down real quick,
It
just so you know which one to start with.
the
Which one
differences
do you
are
prefer overall?
the difference really comes down to like, excuse me, the unicorn to me and the voiceover are the biggest differences in the cuts.
Yeah.
The theatrical cut is all voiceover, no unicorn. I wanted to watch the director's cut and prep for this, but then I was just like, I was reading a little bit about it, and it was like some members of the team slapped the director's cut together.
Yeah.
And even they were like, this isn't the one that Ridley Scott actually wanted. They were like,
Yeah.
we have the unicorn, but the rest of the movie is what you already saw. And as I just,
and the unicorn's like a shorter version of it.
yeah, which is crazy because it's already pretty short.
Pretty short. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing where, so the theatrical cut was created. It had really, it's really interesting. If you're a Blade Runner fan, you should watch the Dangerous Days documentary, which is like 3.5 hours about the making of the movie, but they go through it all. The original Blade Runner, it's confusing in the sense that they throw in these sci-fi words and replicants and skin jobs and spinners and city speak and all this stuff. So they decided last minute basically to throw in the narration to help with that. And
it just makes it.
I would like, I want to like the narration because it is a very film noir detective story just set in the future. And I like film noir narration, even if it's cheesy. I think it would work, but it just needs to be intentionally part of the story from the beginning.
Yep.
And not come up with rushed at the end and not have any time really spent on writing it. And
because you can tell,
terrible.
You can tell. I love plenty of movies that have voiceover on it, and the voiceover is like, yep, it helps move the story. It helps you understand. It fits into the movie. The voiceover on the theatrical cut, you can tell that it was like, oh shit, we need one more thing. And the studio execs were like, do this. And it's the worst narration. You can tell Harrison Ford is like, and he called them skin jobs. He was a guy that back in the old days
a racist cop.
Yeah, he's racist. Like, you can tell Ford was just like reading from the paper and being like, worst writing ever. How many more of these do I gotta do?
Contractually obligated to do
right,
this.
Like, we do one take, and if it sucks, it sucks. Because Harrison Ford hated the movie already, so...
Yeah, it's a huge... So the worst part is the climax of the movie, because as an audience member, you're invested in the situation, you understand what's going on, you're emotionally aware of everything that you've just seen, and then the narration comes in and literally interrupts your emotion and experience, and then beats you over the head with the most like over explaining everything that you already totally understand. It's just the worst, especially for that ending. So yeah, I would honestly avoid theatrical cut unless you're super curious about it.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and there's plenty of people that actually, like you already said, plenty of people that prefer it and enjoy it. That was the one they saw. That was the version they fell in love with. They don't care for the rest. I get it. That's fine.
Yeah, sure. The other big thing, aside from the narration and the theatrical cut, is that there's a happy ending.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of forced, joyful ending that the studio obviously forced Ridley Scott to add. And I think Harrison Ford said it feels like it's a scene from a completely different movie. It doesn't fit at all. So it's interesting, but it is what it is. And then, so the director's cut is interesting because they were going to, I guess there was some film festival in San Francisco or some shit, and they had found a Blade Runner reel, and they're like looking at it, and they're like, oh, I think this is maybe an actual director's cut. And so they started playing it, and people really enjoyed it. And then they came to find out that it was actually the original work print of Blade Runner that was unfinished and didn't have Vangelis score at the end. It had like what's that called? Temp track of Planet of the Apes or something like that.
Okay. Oh yeah,
And,
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ridley Scott, they started like showing it in other theaters, and Ridley Scott like disowned it because he's like, that's not real. And so then Warner Brothers stopped. They got some film archivist to actually work with Ridley Scott to get his notes and put a director's cut together, but Ridley Scott approved it, but he didn't actually do anything with it. So the director cut is out there. It removes the voiceover. It adds a little unicorn scene and removed the happy ending, basically. And then the final cut is it builds on the director's cut because it is Ridley Scott's full vision. He had full creative control over it, and it has the original full-length unicorn sequence. And then we didn't talk about it, but there's an international cut or a Criterion cut that actually came to the North America, the 10-year anniversary edition, which is more violent and has some alternative edits. All of those are added from the international theatrical cut into the final cut. So which version do you prefer? Is it the final cut?
It is the final cut, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the way to go.
To me, it has the best pacing. It makes the most sense. It's the most interesting. Yeah, I have to give it a lot of credit because that was also the version that made me kind of like become a fan of the movie, considering the first time I saw it, I was with my dad. I don't think my dad's ever watched the final cut. I think he still has only ever seen that theatrical cut or the TV edit.
He still hates Blade Runner.
And still doesn't think it's that great. He doesn't hate it.
Yeah.
I just don't think he thinks it's like, yay.
All it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may have changed. Him and I haven't talked about Blade Runner in a long time. That may have changed, but I just remember growing up, he was like, yeah, that one's not the best one.
Yeah.
And a movie being slow, even when I was younger, I've enjoyed plenty of slow-paced films. So I've never been one that like worries too much about a movie being slow moving or being patient. I actually think some movies should be way more patient than they are.
Right.
And even as a kid, it's kind of weird knowing, like, even as a kid, I liked some slow films because kids are supposed to want all the flash and everything right away. I still like that. I was just weird.
Yeah. Sure.
But Blade Runner it's all about that final cut for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, I mean, the theatrical cut obviously had problems. When it first came out in 1982, it flopped, basically. A budget of $30 million, not including marketing, and it only made under $42 million. And I kind of get it. I mean, it's very niche sci-fi, and I don't think I've seen a trailer for it, so maybe it was even marketed as more actiony than it really is.
I could see it. I mean, you look at any image used for it, it's always him running on top of the cars, with the rain. His gun is always drawn, and you're like, that's one scene.
Yeah, literally. In the whole movie. Yeah. It also came out the same day as The Thing and the same month as E.T. I think E.T. owned that summer.
100%.
And also the same month as Star Trek Wrath of Khan and Conan the Barbarian. It was kind of a packed month.
It's almost like it was destined not to be successful when it first came out. It's definitely become very successful since. But I think it was mixed with the wrong bag of other films that were full of like the excitement and just the thing. Yeah. The Thing actually is kind of slow as well, but it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's the isolation. You got a monster that you never actually see the real form of it. You see it, fucking with other forms. But
I think The Thing also failed at the box office and later went on to become a cult classic and then consider one of the best movies of all time, like Blade Runner
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
which is interesting.
But trying to go up, I mean, how do you compete against Star Trek, especially Wrath of Khan? Because that movie from the get-go has been regarded as like, this is the shining Star Trek moment, period. No one's ever going to get near it. You're never going to top it.
Yeah.
E.T., you're not going to top E.T. That movie took the world by storm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely had its issues early on, but I think it living on and to become one of the most rented movies of all time, I think that's led to it becoming one of the first movies that they released on DVD, is because on VHS it was kind of a hit in the rental space, and people started finding it and loving it. And so I definitely like it a lot now. It's one of those movies that you can kind of just put on and enjoy. And I talked about it in the top 10 scores episode we did recently, but you just listen to that synthesizer music. It's very much, like I said before, kind of a space film noir movie. And if you replace the saxophone with synthesizer, just a slow paced detective story, I really, really like it now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, after I saw that final cut, it clicked with me, and I understood it. To me, like, being able to understand Deckard way more in that final cut, and you kind of hear, you have more subtleties to him. You're able to start learning a little more. He's got, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I've never been the biggest fan of like synthesizers in some movies, but there's been a couple movies that it just, you can't imagine a score without that kind of stuff, and Blade Runner is one of those.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine it without that style of music behind it. It would just be bad.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm a Ridley Scott fan. Especially considering this is his second major movie after Alien, and he did a lot of commercials and things like that. But as far as features go, Alien was a huge hit. Then he did this movie, and I like the majority of his stuff quite a bit, and so I think it was definitely done well. And then, cast is great as well. And I think Harrison Ford, even though most people think of Star Wars and this movie came out, when they cast him, he was doing Indiana Jones at the time. And there's an interesting story on the Dangerous Days documentary where they originally envisioned it as like a film noir detective with like a fedora and a hat and everything.
He did not want the hat.
And they also had he had just done Indiana Jones with the hat, and like, you can't have two movies with two different characters with basically the same look. That people just get so confused. Like, why is Indiana Jones in space? I don't understand. Well, he's not in space. He's on Earth, as we've established, but it's in the future. At least.
It's in the future. It's in the future. 2019.
2019. Very, very good year, I guess.
But yeah, he didn't want the hat, so he got a haircut that was like as basic of a haircut as you could get, and that was approved. And just like, that's our guy. There's Deckard.
Yeah. So how you want to go about this? You want to start at the beginning?
I mean, we could start at the beginning. There's a lot to try and like. Blade Runner has always been interesting to me because it's one of those movies where I know that it's a couple hours long. I know there's a lot that happens in it. But somehow the ending always just kind of like suddenly is there. At least to me. Where you're like, wait a minute.
I know what you mean.
He was still just eating noodles at the Chinese place, being taken in by Gaff to go and talk to Bryant. He just found Leon and got his ass handed to him. He just interviewed like, wait a minute, why is him and Roy, like, why is Roy chasing him already? It cracks me up every time that I watch that. I don't know. We could start at the beginning. I kind of, cracked up. I'm gonna be honest. I forgot that they dated the movie, and you and I talked about this a long time ago on the show.
It was like last year, but yeah.
Was it? I could have
It was
sworn.
when we did our 10 movies set in 2022, I think.
Oh shit! Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, it
Because
felt like a lot longer than that.
there's a weird amount of movies that dated themselves as being set specifically in 2022.
That's right.
And we watched all of them.
So I forgot that Blade Runner dated itself 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it showed up, Los Angeles 2019, instantly I was like, yep, movies got to quit dating themselves. Like a futuristic movie, you got to stop putting a date on yourself. And then I thought, you know what? Maybe you could get away with it if your general audience can kind of set it up as like alternate timeline / universe. Like,
yeah.
Not current one, because it doesn't work here.
Right. It's one thing to be set in, like for a movie to come out in 1982 and for them to be like, yeah, this is 37 years in the future. The technology will be, computer screens will be the exact same basically, but the cars will fly. And so it'll be totally futuristic. Yeah. And then we get there and computer screens are way better and cars don't fly. It's the exact opposite.
They tried a flying car one time. It failed miserably. So that ain't happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I do agree. I kind of prefer thinking of that as like, this is just a sci-fi movie in some place at some time.
Yeah.
And it can, parts of it can be futuristic, parts of it can be old and ancient, and it just kind of works as a general fantasy thing, I think.
Yeah. You don't need to date it. I think the only movie that really gets away with doing that was Back to the Future. But even that's kind of, I think that just writes the innocence of that trilogy so well that people like, oh, it's okay. It's all right.
Right.
Yeah, dude, we can start wherever. I kind of feel I lost my train of thought there for a second. I know there's like two parts that I personally know we will have the most to say during those two parts, because I think one of them will spark both should spark interesting discussions.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to break the movie down, I kind of have to start from the beginning, right?
Yeah. I think that, so I have a weird thing where I don't really like movies that open with a scroll.
Okay.
Or crawl or whatever the fuck you call it.
So you don't like
unless it's Star Wars.
You don't like the movie scroll.
Yeah. For it to like come up and say, here's what happened. This Tyrell Corporation, they invented replicants. They're a cybergenetic organism that are used as slave labor and off-world on colonies, and we just basically forced them to go to space and explore it for us. And then there's this Nexus 6, which is the most recent, most advanced form of that robot, and they escape and try to come to Earth, and it's illegal. And the special police units called Blade Runners have orders to shoot and kill replicants on sight if they're on Earth, because they're apparently trespassing and not allowed. I'm like, I could have figured that out in like 5 minutes of the movie starting. Well, no, that was an exact, reading of the actual beginning of the movie.
See, I don't mind like movie scrolls too much. I will say I will skim them.
Yeah, but I'm kind of a slow reader, so I do also either pause it
just to be able to read it.
Or have to skim.
I don't hate them. I don't think they're necessary half of the time.
Yeah. I just prefer figuring it out myself.
Well, and you typically can figure out something on your own.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think the scrolls are always necessary. I know it's a big thing with like science fiction stories or science fiction movies because they're trying to set up the world that you're about to see.
Yeah.
But I kind of like just being dropped into the world and just like, I have to adapt to this world real quick. I wonder
Yeah.
what I'm gonna have to just like accept as this is a reality there. Unless it's like Jupiter ascending, I refuse to accept that kind of reality.
I thought you were going to say I need a lot of information and
but
story so I know what the fuck's going
but
on.
if it's Jupiter ascending, it's not that I need a lot of like explanation on what's happening in the movie. It's more of I need to know why anyone thought that was a good idea. Period.
Yeah.
Um,
I need like a little making of documentary at the bottom of like, how did this even happen?
that could really just consist of like the makers just being like, "We're sorry,"
Yeah.
and Channing Tatum being like, "I can't believe I fucking air roller skated. It looks so bad." But we digress.
Yeah, we should digress for sure. If you care about that, we did a whole episode on Jupiter ascending. It goes about how you would expect. So the whole, I guess, if we hit the at least the high points, because I know we're going to talk about in depth about the movie stuff, and then also just unrelated conceptual themes
See,
and questions that the movie. It's not unrelated, but the movie brings up questions and philosophical things that are worth thinking about and debating
I
that we'll
almost
probably get sucked into.
this one took me off guard just because timing of real world things
Yeah.
and this movie. Obviously, you and I didn't plan that kind of timing.
No, embarrassingly, I had the idea for doing the Blade Runner episode because I was like, Barbie's coming out. We should do a Ryan Gosling movie, and Blade Runner 2049 is like the most like Ryan Gosling personality movie. So I was like, we'll just do that. And then we decided to break it into two parts. And then, yeah, the whole writer's strike and actors strike came up all about how AI is going to take their jobs. And they took our jobs. And it made us like pause for sure.
I
We're
did
like,
have
I
to
can't believe
pause
how
because I was prepping
appropriate
this
this
deep
is.
dive like we've done every other deep dive where I was like, all right, we'll break it down like
Mm-hmm.
plot point by plot point, just kind of going in and then diving into like the character drives and all that, like we normally do.
Yeah.
And then the strike happened, and then details of like what the studios are trying to get away with the streaming, and then what they're trying to present to the actors with and writers,
Mm-hmm.
all involving AI bullshit. I'm not gonna lie, Jake. I was like, I feel like we can't deep dive into this one like we typically do. And I could be wrong,
Yeah.
and I'm still up for doing it as we typically do. But I definitely felt that
No,
like
it can go
this feels
wherever
like
we
there's
want.
more. I was like, this feels like the kind of this is why I texted you the other night of just like, I feel we have to talk about what's happening right now
Yeah.
because this is relevant and it fits with the
Mm-hmm.
movie, which is funny because Ridley Scott has been very vocal about like, I did not make like an esoteric film. It's not a movie with deep meanings. It's not a movie with any of this stuff. It's supposed to be a piece of entertainment. Hate to break
Mm-hmm.
it to you, Ridley. Your movie kind of has some stuff that is relevant now that you have to look
Yeah.
into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if he didn't mean to, just the book it's based on, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep,
Yeah.
I think tackles all of the same concepts. And I think the movie seems to, I haven't read the book, but from what I've read, it seems to tackle the same subjects well in the sense
Yeah.
that it presents are these non-human beings with intelligence and experiences and memories and all this stuff, are they people, and does their life have value, and does it matter, and all of this stuff, and to what extent are they the same as people and they deserve all of these same things, or is there some dividing line between them? And so I that's probably my favorite part of Blade Runner is that conversation of, I also enjoy the mystery of, and this may be more of a fan theory, or was a fan theory until 2049 came out, of, is Deckard also a replicant or not? And if he is, what does that mean for him and for society, and primarily for the audience?
Mm-hmm.
We think of these replicants and skin jobs as just robots, but they're clearly beings that certainly want to live. Batty is the bad guy. Yes, he kills, a lot of people.
He has good intentions, but he just does it in the most terrible way.
Yeah. But if you can look past the killing of 26 people or whatever it is, he just wants to live longer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he does end up saving Deckard, is because in that moment he values life. I wish he had learned that a little bit earlier, but that's the general gist, that life is sacred, even if it is synthetic. Maybe maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I think it's open for debate for sure.
AI has become kind of a trigger for me over the last few years, more so now. I am not for AI. No. Like, at all. It's weird to say this, but we really should have, as a society, we really should have listened to James Cameron way more. We should have listened to H.G. Wells way more. We should have listened to all these guys that have been trying to tell us forever,
right?
Like, your dependency on technology, your obsession with making it better, trying to do all this. You keep saying it's for the right reasons, but it never is.
Yeah.
Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park as a whole means of, just because you can does not mean you should. And when you do it, you absolutely should not try to profit off of it and manipulate it and exploit it.
Yeah.
Here we are in 2022 studios, and like, not just Hollywood, but there's a lot of people out there, companies and stuff, that are all for, like, oh no, we need to just make AI as powerful as possible. It'll take care of us. It'll make life easier for us. Are you fucking stupid?
Right. Yeah, I really enjoy the memes that are like, I did not sign up for a future where AI gets to paint and write stories and all this stuff, and human beings have to do all the really hard jobs.
Yeah, right.
I thought it would do the opposite.
But people, I think we are so far, I mean, we are crazy dependent on our technology. The obsession, dependency on it has just become more than an addiction. It's like, I mean, I think it's killing us, honestly.
Yeah.
And the
I think there's.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think there's a couple of things to that. I think as human beings, hubris is kind of innately within us, and we always think we can, even though we've heard all of the warnings, we can handle it. We know the boundaries, and we can put enough things in place, but it never works out. If you've ever seen any movie ever, it never works out.
I think a dumb way to put this, maybe someone will understand it who just still can't see the dangers of AI or this craze over our technology. The dumb way to put it, to me, as an example for it, is you go to a party. Let's say you're a young kid.
Okay.
Let's say you just turned 21. You go to a party, or you go bar hopping for that first time. You go out with this mentality. You've done your underage rebellious drinking, right? You've drank your shitty beer. You've done your shots of like cheap whiskey that you stole from your parents' liquor cabinet, because you're not going to touch the expensive shit. Your dad is going to notice. You steal the
Yeah.
shitty, cheap stuff. You show up to a party or the bar hopping for the first time and you flat out announce, whether to yourself or you're just trying to brag, I know my limit. I know I can handle it. I'm fine.
Right.
And then you wake up a day later with absolutely no memory of anything, but
Yeah.
everything is shattered and you have to
Right.
try and figure out how to pick up the pieces. And to make it worse, it's not a comedy like The Hangover. It's reality where you realize as you start figuring stuff out, you have fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out, how did I get here? I feel that way constantly whenever I'm on social media or on the news or whatever. I'm like, how did we get here? And hubris is a big part of it. I also think just general laziness that human beings seem to have a drive for. Let's keep making things easier and easier and easier, where I think that we are getting more and more lost as we don't have that meaning in our life of actually doing the hard work. and and if you can write a masterpiece novel just by asking, hey computer, could you please write me this novel, and then it spits it out, there's absolutely zero fulfillment in that, compared to years and years of crumpling up the papers, throwing them away, actually putting together something you're proud of. Whether it's as good or not, you will at least feel way, way better and way more fulfilled in it.
Yeah, the laziness in general is upsetting to me. The laziness with creativity is really upsetting to me because it's like you control your creativity. Absolutely no one else in the world can control your imagination. It's full, like it is 100% you. And to be so lazy and so stupid, like there's no better way. I'm not even going to mince words. Like you're a fucking moron if you think, yeah, you know what? I'm going to let the AI system come up with my story. That's so much better. I'll just put my name on it at the end.
Right.
No,
it's cheating.
It's cheating in
cheating.
The worst degree, because
you're cheating yourself.
You're cheating yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are robbing yourself. You're not even robbing yourself. You are deliberately giving away fulfillment on accomplishing something.
Yeah.
How pathetic.
Yeah. It is really, really, really terrible. And to bring it back to movies and Blade Runner for a quick second, CGI and special effects is the same thing.
Yep.
If you make it so easy for a movie to put some unique world, just any world you want in an instant on a green screen, and explosions and all this stuff, yeah, you could do that. It'll be crazy and different than anything you've ever seen before, because you can do different things way, way easier. But it's not going to hold up. People are going to notice. And even if they don't, I just think there's so much value in, before you could do that, people had, like you were saying, you had to put in the work to figure out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to accomplish this? And get creative in all of the ways. Like Blade Runner is one of the first, probably one of the last movies that had no digital CGI effects in it. And it was all practical, all models, all matte paintings. If you learn how they do matte paintings and composites on film, like it's not like you just cut it out and drop it into the frame. It's like, no, this is a film strip that has a single frame every 24 frames every second. You have to get it all right. A lot of the scenes in Blade Runner is multiple exposures of that same frame of film. And sometimes they had to pass over it 12 different times with different effects and lighting and all of these different things, a matte painting in the background or not. And and create a single frame of film, and then do that 24 times for a second, and then do that for an hour and 50 minutes for the full final cut.
Right.
Like, it's absolutely insane the amount of intention and care that is put into something like this that we just don't have anymore. And it's not like a nostalgia thing. It's like it actually matters. And I think it matters not just to the people making it, but to the people watching it and falling in love with it.
I think we are seeing audiences kind of slowly. It's slow.
Yeah.
But I will take the slow at the moment. Obviously, I wish more people would kind of hop on, get a clue.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of movies and audiences, I think we are seeing audiences starting to react to movies that are not relying on the CGI stuff. We are seeing the decline in the comic book movie because, one, the storytelling has gotten lazy. And two, one of the first things, whether it's the MCU or the Flash, calling you out, Flash, the biggest complaints are your CGI is horrendous.
Yeah.
And I absolutely do not buy Andy Muschietti excuse of it was on purpose. No, your CGI sucked. Like, it looks bad. Stop doing it. But I think we are seeing audiences kind of slow, and it's a small percentage, kind of turning on this idea of relying on the CGI stuff. I think people might be coming to a mentality of like, if you're gonna have that much digital effect in a film, you might as well just make an animated film,
right,
and call it a day, because animation, people are going to respect more of you just saying, no, it's animation, and it looking really, really good, than saying,
instead of trying to trick us and like, no, this is real life. We promise.
Oh, it's live action, and it's like 99.9% CGI that you can tell is 99.
Not even the paces, not even the people's faces anymore are real life. It's de-aged or whatever.
And the de-aging and the CGIing, like deceased actors or characters or whatever, it never looks good. It always looks off. You're better if you just either like cut and paste a shot from a previous movie. I'm going to get a lot of eye rolls right here, but bear with me.
Back in my day, and this is where I don't want to sound like an old man 2 episodes in a row, but
we are.
You would just find a younger actor that looked kind of like that person, and everybody was fine with it.
Everyone was fine. You didn't even have to find someone that looked even remotely like your lead actor.
No.
You literally just said, this is them at this age.
Yeah.
That works. We're good with that.
I'm not taken out of the story at all. I completely buy that is a real person and that character that I've been watching and I love. It does take me out of it when I'm like, well, that actor is not that age. I know that actor who was on the Tonight Show like yesterday. So it just takes you way out of it.
Yeah, I am with you. I am all for like just cast younger actors. I'm so tired of de-aging shit and the. It's weird to say this because there are so many movies that I enjoy that are heavy CGI that do rely on the stuff, and I enjoy those movies. But I do find myself not going back to them as much because I'd rather watch an older film where I'm like, they had to actually pull this off.
Right.
And actually pulling it off tends to make your story feel better. It feels more genuine when you can tell, like, no, they really had to do that. Holy crap.
Yeah. I think that connection with the story and the connection with it being genuine is probably the most important part. Technology does make it really easy, much easier to pump out. I think this is the Marvel problem. Pump out a bunch of stuff, a bunch of movies, a bunch of shows, and they're not fully baked. They're not well written. And so for that reason, they're not well received. It's nice to see these grand CGI images and worlds that I've never seen before or would never see in the real world. But it's very superficial, and it's very it's pretty colors and flashes and things, but I don't connect with it the way I would if you wrote a really good story or really good characters or took that time. And it doesn't have to be super flashy. And I think that those are the things that audiences will connect with, will receive well, will stand the test of time, and all of that important stuff.
So sticking with the practicality side of stuff, and don't worry, folks, we'll bring it all back to Blade Runner. But this is the kind of stuff that current events and Blade Runner really like. The combination of these really sparked a lot for both of us, really.
Definitely.
And then I had to laugh when I found out that when Blade Runner came out, guess what was happening then too? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Writers and actors strike was happening because the studios were fucking them over. What?
Yeah, I laughed out loud when I was watching the Dangerous Days documentary, and they're like, this set design in Blade Runner was absolutely insane, and the art production and art department and stuff was really, really intense. But they had like 6 to 9 months to do it because they couldn't start filming because an actor strike was going on.
Yeah.
And so they actually were able to do a lot of really good work on it while they waited, which is pretty incredible.
They had the time. Oh, crap. I totally just lost my shot. Oh, that's where I was. I saw a clip of, it was like a behind the scenes thing of Barbie.
Okay.
That just came out. And this behind the scenes clip made me be like, oh man, I could probably, like, I was curious. Eventually I'm going to watch Barbie. I don't know when, but eventually I will. But watching this behind the scenes made me be like, I would watch this movie for this sequence alone, and I would probably enjoy it. It was, I guess there's a whole travel sequence in Barbie where her and Ken, I bet it's when they're going from the Barbie world to the real world.
I would imagine.
But the behind the scenes, they filmed it like the old school film. So it's got that, like, the backdrop, you have that action, and then you have that front prop. That kind of, it's like that 3-stage with the movement and everything, but it's actually them, whether they're on wires or riding the bike through the countryside, a boat through the ocean. And then seeing the behind the scenes that they did it practically, and then like they do obviously the comparison of here's the final product.
Yeah.
That made me smile. And what made me smile even more was hearing Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and Greta
Gerwig.
Her. I will never remember her name. Hearing them talk in that kind of excitement, filming that sequence, you can tell when an actor genuinely is all for the project they're doing and parts of it, because their demeanor is so different than when they're trying to be like, I have to say the same answer every interview that I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. If the performers and the people involved with the movie are fulfilled in what they're doing, then it's going to be captured on film, and it's going to come across. The audience will connect with that and be able to feel that it's like captured on the film, and then it's projected into the theater, and people actually feel that.
Yeah. And I saw that behind the scenes. It made me hopeful, like more hopeful for it. And I did have that thought. I think you've probably had this thought with some movies too, where you're like, I bet that one scene would just be worth watching the whole thing for. I might even end up enjoying it just because I was so curious about that one part.
That part is very exciting. I haven't seen that or heard that, but I do feel that way about just the production design and set design for the world.
Yeah.
I'm like, it looks like it's really, really well done.
Yeah. So I think practicality, realism, I think what Blade Runner, trying to bring it back, folks, kind of does help challenge. And Jake, you brought this up, was like the real world that we're presented with in Blade Runner, it's raining the whole time. It's dark. It's gross. It's dirty. There's like no sunlight the entire movie.
Yeah.
It takes place at night the entire film. But everyone, the public around, it's crowded, it's dirty, and all that. And then you have these replicants running around who could potentially be very hazardous to humanity. They could potentially be such a unforgiving threat, and that's what the Blade Runners are there for. Deckard and
they're way stronger than any person, way faster, way smarter, and just to escape Mars, they killed 23 people.
Right, and they're self-aware, they're sentient. Like, it's all bad, folks. It's all bad. The Blade Runners exist to kind of preserve the last little bit of like realism. You know, even the animals are gone. They're all fake animals.
Right.
Unless you're crazy rich and you can afford a random real animal.
Yeah, they all seem to be at least endangered, if not extinct.
Yeah. And these replicants. Now, I know 2049 really challenged everyone with this thought process, and I accept it. It's kind of a paradox for me. But I am not for the replicants.
You're like Brant. You're like, these fucking skin jobs.
Kind of like Bryant. Yeah, I'm like, we gotta take them out, guys. Like,
I think it's a really interesting thing, and that's like I said, my favorite part about Blade Runner is that I think it does pull on your empathy strings for them, in spite of the fact that they killed a bunch of people. And 2049, like you said, does do that way, way more, and we'll get to that later. But figuring out exactly what is real is a big part of this story, and the people are the primary thing of are these real people or not, and that the animal discussion is really interesting to put up against it, I think, because for me, I agree with everything that you've said about AI, and I completely agree it's a bad idea. But when I watch this movie and I watch 2049, I'm like, he's basically a person now. Like, he
fully accept my hypocrisy or paradox. I'm challenged by it.
But then I think about the synthetic animal thing, and they talk about how, well, so many of these animals, basically all these animals, are synthetic, and they are also robotic, basically replicant animals. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, so they're not real then. Like, in my mind, I immediately know there's real and then there's fake. And you can fake it all you want, but you'll never be real. And so I guess in my mind, I'm thinking there's a value associated with something that is real, that you can fake and get as close as you're able to, but it will never be the same. And then I wonder if I am able to give more empathy towards the human replicants because they have a face.
Okay.
And they're because when I think about AI and like AI now, I'm like, fuck AI. I don't care. Like, take it out back and shoot it. I don't give a fuck. But if that AI gets put into like a ex machina body with a face on it and goes around calling herself Ava, I'm like, well, let's hold on a second. She might be okay.
Until you find out that she's super manipulative and like potentially the most dangerous thing to ever wander the streets.
Yeah. And it will, I think having the face, if we stop it before it has a face, then we're going to be okay. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I think that it won't stop because we're stupid.
Personification is what gets you, you're saying.
Yeah. I think even if it's like the Turing test and a chat bot, and you're like, it's able to convince me that I'm talking to another person or something like that, it's still not a person. Like if someone says it's not a person or whatever, you find out it's not a person, even if you can't tell, it will still never be a person.
Yeah.
But if you are Roy Batty or you're Kay or you're whoever, and you walk around and you live your life and you generally don't hurt anybody, and you gain these memories and you gain these relationships and gain all this stuff, then, and you're, face to face with me and all this stuff, then yeah, maybe you are more of a person. It's a difficult question to answer.
It is a
for
difficult
sure.
question. And I know my reaction to it is very like knee jerk reaction-y. Fuck AI, fuck this like dependency. And I am pretty adamant about that. I'm so tired
Yeah.
of it.
I am getting more and more annoyed with it. Every time I go to a website and it has a little fucking icon with that, they're starting to use like all the same icon. They're like, use our AI. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
How do I turn this off? Get me out of here.
I'm so tired with how Idiocracy style our world and Black Mirror our world is becoming. And it's not just that it's like, this isn't a natural way to me. I'm like, no, we are just so consumed with our own hubris, our own laziness. We don't know limitations. And instead of trying to give ourselves limitations, we keep opening up more boundaries. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's a good thing to tear down walls, like tearing down the Berlin Wall. Good idea. Tearing down mental blocks or like walls that emotional walls. Good idea.
Yeah.
Giving yourself a permission to not have any boundaries with the world you interact with.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the problem is people see the cool stuff.
Yep.
They see Facebook and they're like, hey, look at this. I can talk to whoever I want. And you don't realize 10 years down the road where that's going to lead and social media is going to lead. And we have that problem with AI. It's like, oh, I can make this cute little photo of myself and show all my friends. Won't that be so fun? But you don't think about the fact that 10 years down the road, anybody on the planet can replicate your face online, replicate your voice online, call your children's school as yourself, call your bank account, know all your information, completely steal your identity, and accurately live your life online with every detail just built by computers.
Right.
If they have a 10-second clip of your voice, they can have you say anything you want. If they have a single image of your face, they can make it a motion video that looks exactly like you. And they can ruin your life by making you say things that will get you fired or arrested or whatever. Right. And or they can, find your kids and use your kids or whatever. It's like it can get really scary really fast.
It does get scary really fast. And don't worry, guys. I don't think the irony that we have a podcast that we record on video remotely, depending on a website to record us properly, store our recording. Like,
I have not read the EULA to know what they do with that information.
We are fully aware of the irony and the the double-edged sword that we ride here. But I think in terms of the social side of it, or not the social side of it, the impractical side of all of it, that's where my problem is. And I come back to a lesson that like my dad really busted his ass to try and like ingrain in me from a young age that I kind of ignored for a long time, because we as a species, we like the flashy, we like the cool stuff. We want the latest iPhones. We want the latest technology. If you don't have it, you're not cool enough. We want to drive the Teslas. By the way, living in the Austin area where there's a big ass fucking Tesla plant it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And seeing these Tesla drivers, by the way, y'all are bad drivers. Like, your car
It's the new
sucks.
BMW.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I digress. There's a lot of
Yeah, but
digressing tonight.
there's a lot of I've like there's a lot of things about Teslas that seem so cool, but then it's also not really thought out. Like if you actually live in a place where there's ice, having a door handle that is not exposed and it's smooth and it freezes over, you can't get into your
Right.
car anymore. Like they create way more problems that old cars didn't have by trying to improve stuff
Oh yeah, and
oftentimes.
if you have to get any work done on it, have fun. I guess your
Yeah.
debt is going to be even more substantial. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but again,
But it's interesting, and this ties back into Blade Runner finally. If we ask ourselves what is real online with AI or whatever, or in the movie, these are characters that they themselves, as the replicants, aren't exactly real, but also they live in a world where, or they're dealing with these problems that I think we're headed towards, and we talked about a second ago, which is they have these photographs of their lives and photographs of things that they have believed they have seen. They have memories in their minds of very specific, very vivid detail, but those aren't real either.
right.
And these memories have been implanted in them. The photographs were faked or provided to them just to keep them in this state of believing that they're a person when they're not, basically not really knowing their true identity or their true self.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is a question I found myself thinking about a lot as when you were like, we should talk about AI. The AI photos right now, they're kind of silly. They're kind of fun. The world's, you can tell like how it kind of draws landscapes and stuff. You're like, oh, that's one of those AI photos, or even of people.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, he looks kind of cartoony. That's definitely an AI person. But if you get to the point, which we weren't far away from, of not knowing if this photo is real or not, and it can be generated in a second, that's wild. And so you could certainly, I mean, planting memories in people's minds or stealing people's memories to plant in other people's minds probably isn't that far off either.
Oh no. And it's just, I think so many people are caught up in like, wouldn't that be cool? What an interesting thing. And you're like, it's
Yeah.
interesting, but like not in a actual development kind of interesting. It's interesting in a
Right.
like serial killer style like principle, right? Like you are interested. These things are crazy because they're real and they fascinate you
Yeah.
because they're terrifying. And like if you're not that type of being, you're never going to
Yeah.
understand it. And that not the lack of understanding is what is so fascinating about it. I feel like that principle goes along with this AI obsession where you're like, you shouldn't be calling it interesting in a positive light. You should be calling it interesting in that negative light of like, this
Right.
could be dangerous, and not just could be. The probability is so high that
Right.
more people need to be like, this is a problem.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I was thinking about it a lot, especially before you texted me, but more so after you texted me when I knew it was going to be a big topic of conversation. Because you watch Blade Runner and you watch how Ridley Scott worked so hard to make this movie happen, made compromises, especially in the beginning, but just tried to get the movie done and get the movie out. The writers wrote so many drafts trying to make it work, come up with the right ideas. The actors, so many takes trying to get the right thing, putting so much work in. Blade Runner is sincerely a real movie made by real people on every level. Effects, music, everything.
Oh yeah.
You can feel that realness. But I was thinking about it in regards to the writer strike, and we haven't really talked about demands or whatever, but one of the craziest things I read was studios, or at least some studios, were trying to get actors to agree to one day's pay for them, like their image to be captured,
Yep.
and then they could use it through AI forever. And that's all you would get out of it, is that they would pay you once, go in, get your shit captured,
Yeah.
and then they would basically own your image
They
forever.
own your image and can use it in any future project however they wish.
Yeah, which is insane.
Which is insane. And I did have a moment. I think a lot of people probably have had a few moments like this, especially us non-multi-millionaires who live a celebrity life.
Yeah.
But I think I think you have to put the dollar sign, like that style of dollar sign. I think we have to completely ignore that and think of it as your job. Right. This is these like actors and writers. This is their job. They get paid to perform a service. Is their payment a little bit different than ours? Sure. It's a job. They still have to fill out their W-2s. They still have to file their taxes. They still have to earn a paycheck, collect that paycheck. I think
I don't necessarily think that shouldn't happen, because you have people like Bruce Willis who can't work anymore.
He can't work, but he'll be able to collect his residuals. His family's going to be able to collect his residuals from his past projects, and
you should be able to set up a situation where you can maybe even do future things with your likeness or whatever, if they do that. As far as agreements for the things, I don't think that AI necessarily is the right answer, but I think that if you're going to have
there should be some kind of
companies.
But having a likeness, using a likeness, that needs to remain with the discretion of the actors.
Right. And they should be able to veto it and say, you know what, I would rather not be in this porno that you're about to put me in.
Right. Like, I would rather my likeness not be associated with the thing that I am against.
Right.
Like,
fuck. Exactly.
So I think as people, because I think a knee-jerk reaction from the public is, whiny actors, whiny celebrities. It's not that. If we showed up to our jobs, our 9-to-5s, whatever, and our bosses told us, we're going to pay you for today.
Yeah.
It'll be like, you imagine it'd be one big lump sum, right? And then they say, and then your job, or I'm just going to use your likeness or your voice, whatever. However we want.
You're still gonna use your job. We're still gonna use you for your job. You're just gonna go home and never get paid again.
Right. Like, we expect this from you, but we're only paying you the one time. Bye.
That's insane.
And any worker that's not celebrity would flip the fuck out if your bosses were refusing to pay you adequately. And people freak the fuck out, as you should, for the job that you're performing. I sympathize with them. I feel bad for the writers, because these writers don't get paid like hardly anything unless you're a very high-regarded, high-class writer.
And you have a show that like goes into the 5th season or whatever, which is pretty rare.
And I'm on the side with the actors and stuff. It's kind of weird for me. And I've been thinking about this a lot, of just like, what is the future of Hollywood at this moment? Because it's kind of bleak right now.
Yeah, I honestly think that there needs to be a revolution in it. And it's not just because I'm, a crazy anarchist or whatever, but I do think that there needs to be some sort of a complete change and overhaul in the structure, because it's kind of gotten out of hand as far as just everything, how it's all set up, who's doing what, and everybody thinks about, when you think of like, the actors are striking, you're like, Tom Cruise is out there, like all these big names are having these problems, but it's really all of the people that don't really have a lot of parts, and they're just trying to get by, and they're also being offered, if you come in for one day, then we can just use you in the background of every scene in the world. Like you'll just plop you in wherever with all these little parts. It doesn't really matter. You're an unknown person, but we can now use you, and you don't
Yeah.
ever get to be an actor, basically.
Well, there's that, and then like it's also brought up all of the stuff of their previous work, which an actor and writer, like everyone who is a part of the creation of the film, like it's all in their contracts. Like you get paid residuals. So when your previous work is watched and enjoyed, rented, bought, whatever, you make a, I don't know, tiny percentage off of it. You're supposed to.
Right.
And this, I felt attacked and challenged, but in a healthy way, because they brought up streaming and how dangerous streaming has become for artists out there, whether it's musicians, actors, anyone, because they're not getting paid for the views. And they're like, it's in our contracts that we get paid when people watch our shit, buy our shit, but we're not getting paid for any of it.
They don't track that the same way.
It doesn't get tracked like at all. And I felt kind of like, oh shit, because I stream. I mean, I'll be the first to say, like, I have the stream services because it's convenient for me. It's way more convenient for me.
Right.
And I did have kind of a dilemma. I was like, oh my God, do I need to like just shut down my stream services? Like, I don't know what my answer is here.
Yeah.
I did find some solace because I was like, but you still like physical copies.
Yeah.
And you still go out, whether it's CDs, movies, I will get a physical copy of something when I can. So I felt a little bit at peace for that, of being like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a complete ass, but
no, not most people don't buy physical copies anymore, and that used to be depended on by people. They're like, okay, even if we don't make a lot in the theater, people will buy it.
The
on
sales are going to be there.
Yeah, and now that's not the case. There are a handful of people. You mostly is the only one I know of who buys a physical media now.
I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good thing.
It's so weird to me that this is a state, and I'm with you. I'm like, I think this would be such a great moment for Hollywood as a entity to kind of crumble.
Yeah.
And have someone kind of bring in this rebirth of filmmaking and try and be like, no, let's get back to basics. Let's get back to like the joy of filmmaking. And I'm not going to lie. I really was like, I think fucking Steven Spielberg, I think Martin Scorsese, Chris Nolan, like Tom Cruise. I think these guys who are out there right now who are pushing for practicality, for realism in film, they need to sit in a room and just be like, how do we restructure?
Yeah. I like that idea of a back to basics, back to the origins of filmmaking and super independent, having to figure it out and solve these problems and coming up with whatever you can make. Like, it's going to have its problems, but it's going to be genuine.
It'll be genuine. Let's just try. I think that's important right now. I don't know if that will happen. I think it should happen. I heard A24 is like the only studio right now that has fully been like, we get it. Let's actually try and have a healthy negotiation. And I think they actually did come up with like a new contract for these actors and writers.
I think so. I think that A24 is one of the few that actors are actually allowed to make projects for because they agreed to their demands or whatever.
Which is cool, especially for fans of A24 like you and I, where we're like, let's just their stories are interesting. Unless it's Beau is Afraid, that movie was terrible.
Well, there's a lot of shit that they make, but at least they're genuinely trying. It's outside of this studio bullshit.
Yeah. It's so weird. I wish I would have learned more of the strike when Blade Runner was coming out, just to kind of see like what are the parallels? Because I know a lot
Yeah.
of it is pretty similar, but I'd be
Mhm.
curious, what are the parallels and how,
Mhm.
what steps are we hoping someone takes? I don't want film to go away. And whenever you watch a
Yeah.
futuristic movie, have you ever noticed in movies that take place in the future, Blade Runner included,
Yeah.
there's
Even as the
no,
future past.
yeah, there's no movies, there's no music, there's
Mhm.
like nothing. I
Yeah,
don't
I
want that
had not,
future.
but that's scary. Yeah, I mean, Matrix is that way.
Yeah,
They're all that way.
there's no storytelling anymore.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, it seems like it's so bleak because people have lost their imagination
Mhm.
and their will and all of this stuff. They're kind of just depressed consumers or whatever.
They're, dare I say, we're mindless.
Yeah.
Like androids walking around. So I
Yeah.
guess that could
And
be
there's
another question Blade Runner potentially brings up
mhm,
is there more humanity in Roy for his passion of lengthening his time here on Earth
that's
than
true.
there is in like
He's
Deckard? Or
he's the most passionate about being alive of anybody in the movie,
yeah,
and nobody on the street, nobody in the bar, nobody,
everyone
not
looks
even Deckard.
miserable
He's
everywhere.
drinking every night. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's challenging. Challenging is
Yeah.
good. We need challenging.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I do think that there's also in all of these futuristic movies no more beauty in Blade Runner, especially. There's zero nature
Oh
in
yeah.
this movie. It's everything is destroyed. The animals are gone. The trees and everything are gone, unless you watch the theatrical and see the end. But in general, everything. Nobody. All they have is just dark, boring buildings,
Yeah.
and so much of our architecture these days has just gotten more and more boring, more and more depressing, when we used to build beautiful structures that were functional but also just a joy to see, that actually
There
inspired you as a culture.
yeah, there was it was all about like the practicality of it, which is a huge thing, to just be practical.
Mhm.
Don't worry about flashy. Don't worry about like being as contemporary as possible. I think
Yeah.
the super blocky stuff, it totally, there's sometimes I'll be driving down a street and you look on one side and you're like, ooh, pretty old homes. And you come down, like you cross an intersection, you're like, ooh, I'm in the industry, like industrial area, and it just looks sad. Like,
Yeah.
are we all headed for a Joe versus the volcano kind of world soon, or a Blade Runner world
Mhm.
soon? Yes, we are. It'll probably be a combo. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, there is no joy. Everyone just looks so miserable. Even when Deckard is playing the piano, the like
Hmm.
5 notes that he plays,
Hmm.
he looks so depressed doing it. And it's like, you have the
Hmm.
means and you're too depressed to just do it.
Well, I mean, playing a little devil's advocate, we haven't talked about the movie, but at that point in the story, I'm pretty sure he did just shoot a woman in the back and is kind of dealing with his having a bit of a crisis of conscience, if he is a bad person or not.
Hey,
And if you,
I don't take that as you playing devil's advocate. I think that's fair.
yeah,
Um, he did shoot. He only that sounds so bad, but he only kills women in this movie
that's true because Rachel kills Leon.
because Rachel kills Leon.
Yeah,
But his
yeah,
job as Blade Runner is to retire uh, the
right.
replicants. Like that's his
Yeah.
job.
And you, I imagine they don't really say, but he apparently was the best, and so he must have killed a lot of people in his
I
day, or a lot
imagine
of replicants. They are not people,
it's
as
not
we.
people.
I don't want to offend you and call them people.
He is a retirement professional
Hmm.
when it comes to replicants.
Yeah.
It also kind of like makes me wonder, like, how trustworthy is their 4-year lifespan then if you have to have these Blade Runners to ensure that
Mhm.
replicants are retired?
So I think I was thinking about that. I think that the Nexus 6 is the new model, and I think that they are the ones with the 4-year lifespan.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I think that um, they are also the ones that didn't have emotions initially, but they also knew that maybe they all didn't have emotions, but they learned that you can't have consciousness in a being without them and having them experience the world without slowly developing kind of an
Oh
emotional
yeah.
connection reaction over time. And so they realized, yeah, that probably will be about 3 or 4 years before they figure it out. And so we'll put a ticking time bomb in them, and that would help if they ever get back to Earth. At least they'll be on a rampage for a year or so.
True. True. Uh, okay.
But yeah, it's interesting. They don't really tell you how recent our replic or how recent are the Nexus Sixes. I started kind of piecing that together when uh, Brian sends Deckard to Tyrell's with the
Uh-huh.
Voight-Kampff machine, and they don't come out and say it, but it seems that they don't really know if the Voight-Kampff machine will work on Nexus Sixes, and so he needs to find a Nexus 6 and try it out so that they know when they find one of these ones that are on the run that it'll work. It seems
Yeah.
like,
Of course, he doesn't.
which it,
He only uses the test like the one time, but
yeah,
and not even
yeah.
on the ones that are on the run.
All the other ones, they kind of just come out and say, "Hey, we're replicants," because they start running away or attacking him. But yeah, Rachel's the only one, and she doesn't even know she's a replicant, which is the interesting thing. I
I feel
think that
I feel bad for Rachel.
I do too. It's a shitty situation to be in to have your whole. I mean, she does a good job of not falling into an existential crisis because she has a normal life with a normal job. She's Tyrell's assistant, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Yeah, but you're not real, and nothing you remember ever happened to you, and you're actually a robot. You're gonna die maybe in the next 3 years."
But she doesn't go on a killing rampage. Uh,
No,
she just kind of like lets her hair down, literally.
she does literally let her hair down. Yeah, and she has sex with Deckard, which I feel like we should talk about the sex scene. It's kind of aggressive, I would say.
I find their relationship, is that the right word? No, it's not. I
They're in
find
love.
their forced intimate interaction.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough scene for me. And their love story or whatever, that arc that they have together,
Yeah.
it has never really sat well with me.
Mhm.
It's just such a weird, like, this feels wrong, which maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually kind of was okay with that interaction with Deckard, when he's like, say you love me, say you want
Yeah.
me. Like, this is
Tell me
creepy
to kiss you.
and gross. Yeah, like it's gross,
Yeah.
folks. It just is. Um, of course, by the time the ending rolls around, I find it more understanding just because I think you understand Deckard way more, and the questions
Yeah.
surrounding Deckard are like full fruition at that point.
Yeah.
At least to, I think, most audiences.
Right.
And then when
I
20,
think that he starts to question
yeah,
all of those things earlier than you start to question
right,
because he's a detective, and B, kind of since he's introduced to Rachel and gives her the test, he's like, she doesn't know what she is. How is that possible? She doesn't know. Um, he's everybody, I think, would start wondering, is it possible that I'm a
Is it
replicant and I
possible?
actually don't have those memories and all that stuff?
Yeah, so their forced intimate moment never sits well with me, but I understand why they run off together. And then when 2049 came out, that was a thing for me. Was like 2049, I felt finally kind of gave me that, like, I get those two now.
Yeah, closure.
I still don't really like how Deckard is with her when they're together for the first time. It just feels unnecessarily aggressive.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's what
Yeah.
bothers me so much. Is it feels unnecessary. I feel like it would have worked fine
Mhm.
if you had Rachel initiate it, or just they have
Yeah.
that like a sudden moment together instead of him
Yeah.
being like, you tell me that you want me to kiss you, like,
Yeah. And she's so vulnerable and innocent that she's not doesn't strike the audience, or at least me, as someone who's like would or should respond well to
mhm.
that. Like that's an intentional thing that she's into totally. And so yeah, I think that's kind of why it feels the most weird. Apparently the intimate scene was supposed to be like way longer and more, nice and sensual and stuff, but all of the subtle things always get cut down.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It is weird though. I know we've mentioned it, but we are jumping all over. That's okay, folks. Like
You said you didn't want to go from beginning to end, so we're just doing it.
well, I said we could. I was just like, I know
It's too late now.
there's so many discussions. One big one that I feel like you can't talk about Blade Runner in these times without having a discussion about the dangers of AI and dependency on it. And the exploitation of it. His scene, Deckard's scene when he's with I forget her name, the snake lady.
Zora.
Yeah, Zora. That scene, I think any other time is just funny, and like, because he does the silly voice. And you're like,
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like the goofy voice that he does in Indiana Jones, but it's not quite the same, but it's still. But watching that scene now, and he's asking her about, like, have you felt exploited? Do you think like people are using your image and they're gonna just use it however? Dirty boys with holes in the walls, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true.
Art has become reality. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the snake lady. Oh, poor Zora.
Yeah. The whole cybergenetic stuff I think is fascinating in this movie, from the snake being artificial and the whole investigation from finding the scale and taking it to that lady and her figuring out it's not a fish scale, it's a snake scale. Although every time I watch Blade Runner, she's like, it's not fish, it's snake. And Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, goes, snake? I go, why did it have to be snakes?
Every time?
Every time I watch it, Deckard goes, snakes. And I go, why did it have to be snakes?
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
But everything about the owl and all of the different animals I think is interesting, but none of it's more interesting than when Batty goes to the eye guy. I don't have his name in front of me, but the guy who's basically his whole job is formulating and creating eyes for replicants, and everything about Rutger Hauer and his performance as Roy Batty is fantastic in this movie. And he has some of the best lines in the movie, particularly
I think he has
the end.
The best lines.
the best line at the end is also one he came up with, but I really also enjoy his line at the eye guy's place in the freezer, where he's talking to him and he's like, if you had only seen what I've seen through your eyes.
Yeah.
Like, just the way that works so well grammatically, but also in the concept of the movie, that this man has formed and created these eyes, put them in a robot. That robot has gone to space and seen things happening and the rings of Saturn and all of this
Right.
stuff through those eyes, formed those memories, and come back to Earth. It's like, it's a heavy and wild thing that's just delivered in a single line, I think, so perfectly.
Oh, it's a deep cut line. Like,
Yeah.
because you can't even imagine what he has actually witnessed, been a part of, and you can't tell if he's just alluding to all the beauty or if he's talking about all the like violence or the combination.
Right.
You really don't know. You're not able to read it. And Rutger Hauer is perfect as
everything.
Roy, and the way he plays that. Oh, 100%. I love that whole scene. I feel bad for the eye guy, but I love that whole scene.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody kind of ends up. I mean, it doesn't get it as bad as Tyrell, I think. To have your eyes gouged out by someone's thumbs, that's probably the worst way to go.
That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Yeah, yeah. So I always have found Pris or Pre, whatever the Pre.
I call her Pris. Yeah,
Pris. That's how it's spelled. Damn it.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's like some fuzz fell on my knee. It's weird. Daryl Hannah, I remember when I saw it for the first time, like I already knew who Daryl Hannah was
from Splash.
From Splash. Everyone knows Daryl Hannah. And I was like, ooh, Daryl Hannah. She'll be interesting to watch in this movie. She is interesting, but she's an odd character to me.
Yeah.
I never quite understand, like, are they going for her and Roy have like a thing? They're trying to have a thing, or she's just like this lost child replicant that can't live very long. So what the fuck is she like? I've always felt Daryl Hannah was only cast in this role because she had a name. I've kind of always felt that she was underutilized in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think. I mean, Pris is interesting because she's different from the other four in the sense that they were all more combat focused or heavy loader, industrial focused, and she's a basic pleasure model, as Bryant calls it. And so she's definitely, I think, intentionally more seductive, although Zora does like strip, so what are you gonna do? But her role in the movie, that at least that Roy gives her, is to manipulate JF Sebastian to let them in to his place, and I think she does a good job of being in it, like cute and disarming and sweet, but also like connecting with him in a way that he gets. He's also, J.S. Sebastian is interesting because he's also kind of childlike like her, and he makes toys in his free time. And those toys, by the way, from the first time I saw it to every time I see it, when he gets home and those two little tiny dudes walk in and they go, home again, jiggity jig, like they look so real as like real people, which I think is off-putting, but they're also like tiny little toys, and they got the long noses, and it just looks so scary to me.
They freak you out, don't they?
I'm very uncomfortable with like the toys in his apartment for sure.
I am with you. They don't like creep me out, but I'm like, every time I see them, I'm like, I've seen a handful of movies where the toys are not to be trusted. I saw Puppet Master. I've seen Small Soldiers. I've seen Chucky.
I love Small Soldiers.
That's what the fuck it is. Fucking mosquito got in here. Damn it.
Kill it.
I can't. It's like, anyways. Yeah, I'm like, how the fuck do you sleep at night? Especially, you're part of the problem, JF Sebastian. You're creating these things that become aware.
Right. He closely works with Tyrell to create replicants, and then just in his free time makes these toys that have some form of intelligence. How do you know they're not going to stab you in your sleep?
We've seen the movie.
Yep.
JF,
It
you
happens.
clearly need to find like an old reel of Puppet Master and just understand. The toys will kill you. Which, in a way, I mean, it's not his direct toy, but poor JF Sebastian.
Yeah. That is like the one thing that keeps me from, in my mind, giving Roy Batty, I guess, forgiving him. Like, you don't see him slaughter the 23 people or his group of 6 replicants. You don't see them slaughter the 23 people when they escape from the colony. And you do see him kill the eye guy, but he works for Tyrell, so maybe he's a bad guy. And he kills Tyrell, and that's fine. It's part of the story. There's also a whole thing with, like, in order to grow up, you have to kill your father kind of thing. It's a psychology thing, whatever. But the thing I can't forgive and get over is that this is a man, or this is a replicant, a thing, a person, the unit who is supposed to be like valuing his life and wanting it to be longer. And he does save Deckard and values his life, and that's nice. But I feel like really should have let JF Sebastian live, particularly because JF struggles with basically the same affliction. He has an unnaturally short life with some disease that makes him age faster than normal.
Yeah.
And so they should share that bond of, we have a very limited time on this planet, let's make it count kind of thing. When the cops say that JF is dead, I'm like, fuck, like he really should have lived. I'm really upset by that part.
And you should be. I'm glad they don't show him get killed.
Yeah.
I have pretty much always maintained the theory, I guess, that JF knows he's gonna die in the elevator.
Yeah.
I think when Roy gives him the final chess move, the checkmate move, I think that just the way that JF's demeanor is, he's got very nervous demeanor the whole time, but him and Roy have that look. And I think at that moment, JF understands, like, he's out to kill us. We made him. He's going to kill us. And then Tyrell telling Roy, like, I literally can't do anything to extend your life. Like, why? He's only keeping you alive for that one sliver of a chance, and he just took it away. Like,
right
now you gotta die. But I think he was going to kill Tyrell anyways. It made me, him killing Tyrell, and you actually mentioned it, of the, like, killing of the father figure or whatever. And bear with us, folks. So Ridley Scott has said that Blade Runner and the Alien franchise are the same universe. There's like images in Blade Runner that are directly from Alien. And in Prometheus, I think it's Prometheus, they actually talk about events that happen in Blade Runner. Like they mentioned Tyrell. And they might mention him by name, but they talk about a guy that was trying to, like, replicate life, and he just fucked it all up.
Yeah.
And it got me really kind of curious about that, because I was like, well, the whole point of, like, David in Prometheus and Alien Covenant, like, he is set out to create or to destroy his creator so that he can be the ultimate being, this godlike figure, this perfect figure, so he can go and create his own and control his own. And then you watch Blade Runner. Well, I guess you would watch Blade Runner first and then Prometheus. Anyways, and Roy is going to kill his creators to extend his life potentially, and almost like a punishment. This is what happens when you chose, when you made me the way that I am. Folks, are you hearing the dangers?
Yeah, it's very, very true.
But I was like, I wonder if Ridley Scott has this. This must be a story arc that he enjoys, or this like a plot point that he enjoys
Yeah.
of the killing of the father.
Hmm.
I it's an interesting one. It's very intriguing because I think it's a
Yeah.
very dark connotation, and there's
Hmm.
nothing good that comes from it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that uh, Batty basically received forgiveness from him as well, that
Mhm.
he tells him, Fatty says, I've done questionable things, which isn't really admitting that you're wrong or you've been bad or evil or anything. He doesn't say, I made a mistake, I've learned from it, all anything like that. He's just like, I did some questionable things in my life. But Tyrell basically dismisses it and he's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. I mean, you kind of do what you have to do. And I think that's certainly interesting, but yeah, certainly not enough for him to
Oh yeah.
actually uh, let Tyrell live. And it's, I think that, or I wonder if him killing Tyrell is in hopes that he doesn't inflict this pain or burden on any other replicants. Like if he could kill the head of the corporation, if that corporation would die off and no longer continue to create replicants who become self-aware, who are aware of their 4-year lifespan and have to go through that crisis of consciousness. Um, Maybe so, or maybe it was just a selfish thing that he did that out of anger or whatever.
I kind of take it. I don't think he actually values like life as a thing. Well, I think he values.
Until maybe the roof.
I think he values his existence, but being a
Yeah.
replicant, I don't think he can ever fully understand life, like the
Yeah.
complexities of it.
Have that level of empathy.
Yeah, and I think because he will never be able to experience that. He values existence. He wants to continue existing, so maybe he can form
Yeah.
a real memory and hold on to it, or form like a real experience that could be definable in life. Uh,
Hmm.
I think that's more his motivation.
Hmm.
Is just he's trying to force some kind of pseudo life experience or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like when Tyrell's telling him, "I can't do this," I think it's literally he kills Tyrell not only to like, I guess, punish Tyrell, but it's also like, well, I guess I just said it, like you just took away the only thing that I really felt you
Yeah.
valued,
Yeah.
and you took that out, or what you had
Yeah.
of value, not valued. Um,
Yeah. I think so too.
so
I mean, I think
yeah, I think
it's
Roy is just on
interesting.
he can't fully experience the mythos of life, right?
Yeah.
Joy, love. I think it's an interesting thought though that he might only experience stuff such as like hate or anger,
Yeah.
frustration, but he's not able to experience all the other stuff that comes with it or can
Yeah.
combat it.
Or isn't able to yet, hasn't developed those emotions enough
Mhm.
because he has the limitation on his life time frame, and maybe those come later,
Right.
kind of
Of
thing.
course, he's like, I mean, when we meet Roy, he's on like, this is it for me. I'm
Yeah.
about to expire.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always taken, and I don't know how you take this part, but when right before he kills Tyrell, he kisses him
Hmm.
on the mouth, and I've always taken that as more as kind of a thank you, or a not a love because he doesn't know him, but kind of a you are my creator, and I kind of do appreciate having been created, but also fuck you because it's the worst thing ever. And so that's why he does both, kisses him and then kills him.
Yeah. I've kind of always taken the kiss as definitely not an act of love, especially since he follows it up with murder.
Right.
But kind of like, I don't even want to compare it to like the Judas kiss.
Yeah.
But that would be the first thing that would come to mind because it's an act of betrayal.
Yeah.
And that may have been what the idea was originally for him, but I can't really go with that because if you follow that story, like Judas still had love for Jesus, whereas Roy doesn't have empathy or love, period.
Right.
So I take the kiss as kind of like Roy has observed kissing being associated with people saying goodbye.
Interesting.
And so he's saying goodbye.
Yeah, that's interesting. I could buy that.
And who knows? I was trying to read up some stuff on other theories. It's kind of hard to read up on like a lot of fan theories regarding Blade Runner that don't pertain strictly to Deckard being a replicant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this shouldn't even be popping up anymore because they've kind of blatantly told us the answer.
Right. And there's so much more in the story that I think you could pick apart and come up with reasons or motivations or history of these characters in there.
I think
what they're trying to show you.
I honestly think the movie would kind of fail if it wasn't for Roy. I think he is Harrison Ford is the top bill, and nothing against him, nothing against his character, but I think Roy is the meat of the story. He's the most challenging part of the whole story.
He moves it forward constantly.
He does. And Deckard kind of just follows along and like accidentally comes across like Pris and Roy, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
We have not mentioned, and I get it, there's so much to say. We're probably going to miss so much. I'm so sorry, folks. We haven't talked about Gaff.
The good news is we can always cover it next time when we talk about
I can't believe I lost
49. Oh, yeah,
so
Gaff.
Well. Oh, there you are. We haven't mentioned him once or his origami.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, Ridley Scott coming out and being like, there's no deep meanings. Like, this is just strictly entertainment. Don't try to find any, like, hidden stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The origami kind of gives stuff away and is definitely big hints. Or at least big, like, questions. Or
it's purposeful. It feels like you can't say it's nothing.
Right. Like,
because even from the beginning in the police station when he is...
Well, he makes the chicken.
Brian's trying to get Deckard to come back in, and he makes a little chicken. That's very obvious that Deckard is afraid of getting back into being a Blade Runner. Or also, I mean, he has reason to be afraid of both sides, being a Blade Runner, but also not, because Brian basically makes him an offer he can't refuse by saying, you're either a cop or you're a little person, which means that you have no choice but to be a Blade Runner. Otherwise, the police state's going to crush you, basically.
Oh, yeah. But you're like trustworthy.
Yeah. Terribly scary.
People. Yeah. And then he makes like the man figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little stick figure guy.
Yeah. I read out it's supposed to be like the Burning Man or a Burning Man, but it looks like just a blank figure. That's the only one that I feel probably doesn't have too much, except that, and I've never thought of it. Well, I had not thought of it for a long time, and then rewatching this and just like trying to observe it a bunch more. I'm like, dude, Gaff is totally hunting Deckard.
Yeah. He's keeping an eye on him
Like,
for sure.
And I think him making the man is just the kind of like the mystery of the part of the mystery of Deckard. And I think that's Gaff trying to figure out, like, is he or is he not kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's, are you a man or are you a machine, basically?
And then, of course, he tops it all off with that unicorn. I had a buddy. Well, he's still a friend. He met Edward James Olmos, and he had him sign an origami unicorn.
Okay,
I thought that was pretty cool. I was like,
yeah, that's clever.
That would be something you would hold on to. Like, I hope he still has it.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, Edward James Olmos as Gaff is one of the most interesting characters because you see him right at the beginning when he picks up Deckard and he uses city speak, which is a really interesting concept that I'm really disappointed they don't use at all in the sequel in 2049.
Oh, yeah.
Just that all of these societies have come together so much that we've all kind of formed an amalgam of not gibberish, but like jargon, I guess, that slang and everything that you can combine Hungarian and Japanese and German and all of these different languages into just this thing that people kind of just commonly know. I think that's really interesting. And I think it's especially interesting that Edward James almost basically came up with what it sounds like by like, he formed that all of his lines and what languages they would be in and how to pronounce them. And it was his like thing to come up with that. And that was really interesting.
Stop it. Yeah. I hit the mic. It was waving.
Yeah. But I do think it's weird watching the theatrical cut because when you have Deckard find the origami unicorn and then he hears Gaff's voice or remembers what Gaff said a little bit ago about Rachel and how she's not going to live very long. But then again, who does? I would be very confused if that was the first time
100%.
Because, like, I mean, it doesn't really allude to much of anything, which may have been the point. Maybe they thought it was too confusing and let's just take it out. But it means so much. I feel like it's a non-ending without having seen Deckard's unicorn dream or memory or whatever that is. And then to find the origami unicorn, it's, if you're paying attention, those things connect so well that Gaff knows what his dreams are or memories are.
Right.
The only way he can know is if Deckard's a replicant and he's had those implanted, basically. And all of those are on file, and Gaff knows that and is hunting him because he knows he's a replicant.
And I think
go off at any time.
I think, because right after Deckard finds the unicorn, it's him and Rachel have to bail.
Yeah. They're on the run, basically.
Knowing the unicorn dream and knowing that, that's the only way this unicorn could show up. I think that adds more motivation and makes Rachel and Deckard make sense, actually, that they're like, fuck, now we're both in the same boat. Deckard understands like so much more, and you as the audience can understand so much more. By the way, folks, we just spoiled Blade Runner.
Yeah, I meant to warn you we would do that. I think I did.
You did. I just since this one has not gone the traditional route that we normally do.
Yeah, it's not linear.
Yeah, I love the origami hints, and I think Gaff is so important as a character, even for the 4 scenes that he's in. He's so important just because he's he is Deckard in the same vein as Deckard is with Rachel or with the Nexus 6 group. He's just more, I guess, trying to actually be the detective instead of finding. He's trying to figure out are you or are you not? And I think the unicorn dream is the
Right.
That's the answer. Now, where Decker got the unicorn, I think it's probably just like a unique thing that they supplanted into
Yeah.
the mind. Like
Yeah, it's interesting that it's a unicorn and not like a horse. Like it can't be a memory of real life. I'm assuming this is a real world Earth in 2019 where unicorns don't exist or haven't
right.
ever existed.
I kind of take it as like instead of barcodes or like just the thumbprint or something, like the unicorn is the unique thing associated.
Everyone
to
gets
Deckard.
something different.
Like the undercover ones, if you will, have their own unique kind of stamp from Tyrell Company, and
maybe that generation had some interesting imagery or dreams planted in them.
That way, if someone was like doing some brain scans or memory scans, if that popped up, that's your like, oh, we got one.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, that would be very unique.
Man, we skipped a bunch, didn't we? Well, we might as well get to like the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, you say that we spoiled the ending. I think that this is really the true ending.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
I mean, it's the climax, I guess.
It's the climax. The unicorn origami is kind of like the epilogue. This is the actual ending. I think if it wasn't for the conversation, if it wasn't for the monologue on the rooftop, dare I say, I don't think Blade Runner would be as loved. I think his monologue at the end is so good. Yeah. For as short as it is, I think it's so well done and it hits so deep and it carries so much weight that like that's what everyone remembers from Blade Runner essentially.
Yeah. That alone connected with audiences in a way that made this movie stand out above all other movies in the genre.
So good on you, Rutger Hauer, because he came up with, apparently they wanted him to have this huge technical monologue and he was like, no. And he came up with this thing himself, which good on you. That's amazing. Can we have more of that kind of stuff? Which we do. We have a lot of like improv dialogue in films. Keep it up. It works really well. Sometimes.
You never know until you try.
It's true. What's interesting to me about like the whole final 12 minutes of the movie. So you get the Pris and Deckard fight, which ends with her being shot. Well, first it goes with her doing some weird flip stuff and she's pretending to be one of the toys, and then her hair goes like she really
scary.
Yeah, like if you really grip those static electricity balls or whatever, but it like short circuited and it just went like that's her hair. And she's like turning his head in her like thighs. It's so weird the way that
like grabs in his nose.
Like their fight scene is odd to me, but I kind of respect that it's not like choreographed well, that it's not a smooth fight. It's so clunky and awkward. And you got to appreciate that even though he was trying not to emulate Indiana Jones anymore, he still gets up, grabs a gun, and is like, fuck it. And then she seizures a lot like some of the androids from the Alien franchise, just without the milk. She's got blood, but she still has like that freaky...
which is kind of weird because Zora didn't do that. And
Zora didn't do that either. It's almost like Pris's insides were not quite connected correctly. Someone's solder job was bad.
Yeah. Or she's just dramatic.
But Deckard does not talk. He doesn't have a line.
Right.
for like the final, 12, 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not like trying to arrest them. He's like, not like, stop or I'll shoot. He's just like, goes in, fights them, shoots at them, jumps across the roof, fights Roy, listens to Roy's monologue, listens to Gaff's like warning,
Right.
goes inside, looks at Rachel. They walk out, find the unicorn. They walk to the thing. That whole thing, he doesn't say anything.
He doesn't say a word, which I guess I never realized until I had it blatantly. Like, I found that little tidbit of like, he doesn't have any dialogue in the final act of the film. And I was like, yeah, he does. Rewatched it and was like, no, he doesn't. What the fuck?
Yeah. It's a weirdly long time for sure for your main character.
But Roy snaps. He goes weird. He doesn't go crazy. It's just weird. He starts howling.
Yeah.
He like grabs it.
He's the last one.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of it. He's the last remaining one of his group. And I think he knows that time is catching up with him, it seems like.
Well, his hand like stops, like, and he even has that line of like, not yet.
Yeah.
And he pulls the nail out of the floorboard, stabs it through his hand, which I don't know about you, but like the first handful of times I watched this, I was like, is he like going to use his arm as a weapon? But now I'm like, no, he's just trying to like
feel it
and just have like not lose all mobility in that hand.
Keep it from shutting down.
Yeah. And his howling, I think my favorite part inside the building when he's chasing Deckard is when he like punches his head through the wall.
Yeah. Busts through the bathroom wall with his head. Yeah, I agree.
I can see you. And then he shows up with a dove that he just kind of carries around with him during this chase.
Yeah, that's, I think, why I alluded to or said before, I want him to begin to cherish life. And I think that maybe he could, or maybe he does in the smallest way when he saves Deckard, and then also is holding the dove. Like he needs that thing near him, needs to hold on to it as like he's trying to hold on to his own life. He's trying to hold on to that living thing. I assume it's a real dove. Maybe it's a synthetic android dove, but it seems like it works better in my mind if it's a real pigeon or dove or whatever.
We will never know, but we kind of have to assume that it's synthetic just because there's like no other birds in the sky the entire movie. But then again, the movie takes place at night the whole time, so who knows?
Maybe they're sleeping.
Birds do that, unless they're synthetic, and then I don't know what they do. Him saving Deckard, I don't know if I would say it's him like valuing Deckard's life.
Mm.
But
maybe it's selfish that he wants, because his whole speech, his whole monologue is that he's seen these things, he's lived this life, and now all of those memories are lost in time like tears in the rain. If he keeps Deckard alive and then shares that moment with him and tells him a little bit of his story, then maybe those memories will be imparted to Deckard and not be lost.
And that's how I take it. I take it as just the memory of Roy as a being of some sort. I think that's why he saves Roy.
Very carefully trying not to call him a person. He's a being of some sort.
He's an entity, damn it. I take the ending like that, where he's trying to just have one last memory of him
Hmm.
after he's gone, so that he's not lost in
Yeah.
the rain.
That's not all for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I take it. I could be wrong.
I think that's smart, honestly.
I think it fits Roy, but you've said a few times that it's like him kind of cherishing like Deckard's life, like trying to find
Hmm.
some kind of cherishment. And I don't know, you could be right. You could be
Yeah, I
right.
just connect that to his drive to extend his time frame, his life, that as you continue to not be able to do that and you hear that clock ticking in your mind, I imagine you would, or you should, or I would start cherishing those moments, or cherishing life, or also hoping for other people to be able to cherish those lives. But that's probably my human empathy, to want the best for those other people,
Oh
or for
yeah.
them to learn from my mistakes or anything like that. And it's entirely possible he may not have any of that.
We'll never know, because everything I was trying to find out, like why did he save Deckard? Seems everyone has their own ideas, and you and I kind of like encapsulate a lot of the ideas that I was coming across.
Okay.
So that's kind of funny. Maybe it's a combination of all of it. I don't know. I guess
It's
you could argue
also,
that.
I always enjoy when it's open to interpretation
Yeah.
as well, that the less clear cut it is on the screen, the more people talk about it and think about it and imagine what it could be, or find deeper meanings than they probably would have ever had put on the page.
Oh yeah, for sure. I it's so anticlimactic, but to me it's such a great like punctuation on the whole scene after the monologue and the lost like tears in the rain, which is, God, that is such like perfect. It's perfect. That is perfect dialogue right there. Thank you, Rucker Hauer.
Yeah.
But when he's just sitting there and he just like matter of factly is like, time to die, and then does it. Like, to me, it's such a great finale, like punctuation finale. Just that's it. And I love the close up of Deckard where he's just like, he has that look of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Why was I forced to sit here and witness this?
Witness this. Why didn't he kill me? Why did he save me? More importantly, like, he just chased me through the whole building.
Yeah. Also, this is a
sounding
weird guy.
Crazed. I mean, he was howling.
Slammed his head through a bathroom wall.
He slammed his head through a bathroom. He broke his fingers, then gave him the gun back. Like,
yeah.
Which we skipped over that, but that's okay, people. Don't worry about it. But yeah, and then Gaff like magically shows up again, which is also just the times that Gaff shows up are so random.
He had to be
like,
following him.
Yeah, you had to have been watching. You had to have been observing, and close by too.
Right.
Yeah, I think Blade Runner is definitely a lot like so many of the other sci-fi robot / human movies of like the 80s and early 90s of trying to just get caution, the importance of caution out there, trying to get a wide group of people to understand that like proceeding with caution is you need to constantly do that sometimes. Like, everyone likes the idea of, well, you got to just dive into it. That's okay when it's stuff that's not like potentially going to kill you.
Yeah, and you don't know that until you maybe think a little further ahead.
Right. Yeah. Come on, people. Some of you doing this AI shit, you're supposed to be smart.
Right.
You're kind of coming across as crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole Jurassic Park thing where they didn't stop to ask if they could.
Or
They
if
or
they
should.
should, yeah. Yeah.
They only stopped. They only thought about if they could. Yeah.
Ian Malcolm, per usual, was right. Yeah, dude, I genuinely love like Blade Runner. I think it's a very interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm glad, this might sound weird, but I'm kind of glad it was not the biggest hit in the box office, because I feel like
Yeah.
the fan base and its appeal has just been more appreciated, or it's a little bit more meaningful because
Yeah.
it wasn't the biggest box office hit.
Right. The right people found it in the right way.
Yeah. Uh, Granted, the right time would have been a nice thing to have in that same vein, but I guess that's not happening.
Yeah. You can't have it all.
But it is a good movie. It's so weird to me because we mentioned it earlier of like, you can tell when a cast is genuinely enjoying making the movie and it comes across in their performance. Harrison Ford does a great job as Deckard. And it's so weird to know how miserable he was and how much him and Ridley Scott just did not like each other at all.
Yeah.
And how he hated the whole production design of the movie. But then you watch the movie and you're like, but it fits. Like, this works. Yeah. It's a good movie. I'm not getting any like, I don't feel like you hated working on it. I feel like you probably got enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, and the thing I get from watching behind the scenes and documentaries and stuff is that Harrison Ford is a complete professional. That he will show up, know his lines, do all the important things, and also he's really good at what he does. Like he like I forget the girl that plays Rachel, Sean somebody. She was pretty new to it, and so he would always, here's how you stand, here's where your light is, here's like, you need to be aware of this, you need to be aware of the camera, you need to be aware of like all of this stuff. He knows all of that, and he's very intelligently performing every little thing he does.
Yeah.
Whether he cares about the story or content or whatever, it doesn't really matter. He's still going to do the best job possible.
Yeah. And that, man, seeing interviews with him with like Indiana Jones and stuff and just movies in general, that guy, I think he has hit that moment in his life. I feel like he's always been a pretty humble dude and just a matter of fact kind of dude.
Yeah.
He's never struck me as someone that's not going to beat around the bush, but he'll do it in a very...
Yeah, it's very direct.
Direct, but not like a harsh way. He's just direct.
Sure. Yeah.
But seeing interviews with him these days, it's so much fun because he's so humble about so much. And he's like, I guess I've never really appreciated how much he actually just enjoys telling stories.
Yeah.
And hearing interviews with him where he talks about like, that's what this whole career has been, is just, I get to tell stories. I get to create characters, and that's so much fun. And I appreciate that. I think that's really just, he's 80 years old and he's just always been set out to just create stories. Like, he just wants to have fun. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I respect the hell out of him.
Oh, so much. Thank you, Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have too much left on Blade Runner. Do you?
I think we covered the important things. Do we cover both of your important
things? 100%.
The AI stuff? Okay. Make sure we got to the second one.
The second one was just the tears in the rain.
Gotcha.
Like,
yeah,
because I feel that's just the most important part of the movie. I feel like it carries all the weight of the film. And it's just so perfect. It's a brilliant piece of dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole movie, I think, is really just a beautiful thing, and I just love how it feels and the experience of it and everything.
I love the world. I like the
Defines
sci-fi detective noir style. I think it's really cool. I think it was unique for that time. I feel
Mm,
like we don't get a lot of it, if really any. Or maybe I just haven't paid enough attention. I don't know. I could be wrong.
yeah. I
Uh,
think that the slow pacing of it is really set up just for you to experience the visuals and
yeah.
how it
And I
feels
think
and let,
that's I think the pacing in Blade Runner is important to that particular story.
yeah,
I think if they
yeah,
had tried to rush it or make it more action packed or whatever, I think it could have actually ended up being kind of a crappy movie.
yeah, totally.
um, and going into our next episode, uh, I am very happy that they maintained that kind of pacing style
Yeah,
instead of trying to like rush.
right. Yeah, I think they definitely they add more of everything, but it still maintains what Blade Runner is, and that's why I love it a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that's why partly why it's even better than the first
Oh,
one,
it's
that it
sick.
maintains the everything that worked, adds more to it, not just visually and
Mm-hmm.
actiony and stuff, but also philosophically asks new questions, the next
Oh, it
logical
challenges you
question to
even more.
ask.
Yeah. And I'm fully aware, like, I will be face to face with my paradox even more. So when we
I'm
talk
taking notes. I'm
2040,
like, Dustin, you said that
right?
when
Like,
the
you said kill them all, and here you are trying to defend Dave
yeah,
Bautista. So,
yeah, yeah. I can't wait to get into that. Have you watched all of the the stuff that came out around 2049, like the 2038,
no,
the short clip, short film stuff? There's like an anime thing,
no, I
2022.
never watched any of that.
Okay, I'm gonna try to watch it, and then I'll let you know how it is.
Okay.
So yeah, next time we're doing Blade Runner 2049, I think everyone has to have seen it. I say that because I feel like it became such a huge hit, but I was shocked to learn that it also failed at the box office like the original Blade Runner.
It was big, but yeah, it was not
Not
as
the level
massive
it
as everyone
should have
had
been.
hoped or expected it
Yeah.
to be. Um,
Which is kind of appropriate for like following in its footsteps of the
right.
original, but also disappointment.
I kind of have an idea of that, but we can talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Because I think there was like well, we'll get into it next week. I'll
Yeah,
hold
save
I'll hold off.
it.
Um, yeah, Blade Runner. Like, if you have not actually just watched Blade Runner as a film, highly recommend you do. And
Mm,
I do recommend you watch the final cut.
yeah, I do too. And yeah, just go into it no expectations. Just let the movie kind of wash over you with what it is, the soundtrack, the visuals, experience all of it and how it makes you feel. I think is the best way to go into it.
Yeah, and I know you're excited because it's by one of your favorite directors of like all time. So I'm excited to hear you talk about just his ramp up of the
Yeah,
world and the scope
yeah,
that he widens. Uh, I'm
right.
excited to hear you talk about that. So
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about 2049.
yeah,
All right. I think
I
that's
think that's
basically all we have.
yeah.
Watch
It's late
Blade Runner
now, so you can
2049
tell we're
before
both
next
like,
time.
oh, yeah. Watch
Yeah,
2049.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, it's past my,
we got cool shit
and yeah,
by that.
get merch, follow
Thank you to
us
everyone for
on
listening,
YouTube,
watching.
subscribe.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button. I've noticed we've gotten a lot of followers based on a really funny reel that you posted pertaining to Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's wild to me. So I'm in my kitchen doing the dishes, just having Seinfeld going on my phone, and that
Oh,
scene came up, and that idea came to me, and I was like, I'll make a funny little video meme about this clip from Seinfeld, and then I don't know, a day later, this the 10-second Instagram reel has been viewed 35,000 times.
oh right.
for a total length of like 88 hours and 44 minutes. And I'm like, I can't even believe that. That's pretty wild. But
and
that's
I'm like, Florence pubes.
It's funny if you haven't seen the reel because it's about
It's
how
about
Florence Pugh is naked in Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And there's a Seinfeld clip that comments on that. And so, yeah, calling her Florence Pubes is pretty funny.
It works. I have no shame right now. Yeah, I had to laugh. And when I started seeing, like, they start following you based on this reel, I was like, cool. Wait. Like,
yeah, well, we haven't really done any episodes about that topic, but maybe we should.
That would be an interesting one. That would be a real
top 10 most awkward nude scenes.
Could be a funny one.
Yeah.
Huh. We got some ideas already in the can.
We have a whole year's worth.
All right, everyone. Thank you again. Subscribe, do all that good stuff. I know it helps us out a lot. Keep getting the word out. I guess you 35,000 people, if you manage to stick around for 3 hours instead of 10 seconds,
welcome.
Tell more people and welcome.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. So
and
enjoy, guys. Let us know what you love about Blade Runner and 2049 as well. Both.
Yeah.
Or if you're still under the delusion that Deckard is not a replicant. What?
It's people debated it for a long time. I'm sure there are people that believe it strongly on the other side.
I want to hear from you guys. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See you next time.